to our student athletes, coaches, and staff. His passion for athletics and dedication to fostering state high pride have shaped generations of students and families. Chris's energy, kindness, and ability to build meaningful relationships have made him an irreplaceable part of our school, she said. As a coach, teacher, and administrator, he has always led with heart, bringing people together and creating a true family culture within our athletics department. His generosity, sense of humor, and commitment to excellence will be deeply missed. On behalf of our entire school community, we extend our deepest gratitude to Chris for his remarkable service and leadership. Congratulations on a well-earned retirement. State High will always be home, and your legacy will continue to inspire us all. Best wishes for this next exciting chapter. Assistant Superintendent, I'm really having trouble with S's today, I apologize. Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, Jonathan Bucher, also congratulated Chris, saying, Chris has been a pillar of support for our student athletes, coaches, and athletic programs in shaping the success of our athletic programs. We are grateful for his years of service. His passion and dedication will be greatly missed. He has had a lasting impact on our athletic community, and we wish him the best in his well-deserved retirement. Finally, Superintendent Curtis Johnson expressed his appreciation for Chris's work by saying, from early morning to late nights, you have given all of our athletic program, your all to our athletic programs, and we are forever grateful. Your commitment has changed lives, and your presence will be deeply missed. Wishing you a retirement filled with relaxation, joy, and all the things you love. So the board also thanks Chris for his service and wishes him the best in retirement. Yeah. So next up, we'll move on to the superintendent update.
Thank you, Amy. Before I provide my update, I would like to recognize another individual who was retiring in June, Chris Rosenblum, our Director of Communications. Chris joined the district in 2015 from a long journalism career, and over the last 10 years, he has been instrumental in promoting the district through his award-winning writing and excellent communication skills. His knowledge and expertise have helped guide us through monumental changes, such as the State High Project, the construction of 3 new elementary schools and playgrounds, the challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the significant task of restructuring our student day. During his time with us, Chris has played a crucial role in strategic planning, district publication, and of course, helping write my superintendent speeches. Most importantly, Chris is a genuinely good person who comes to work every day with a smile and a positive attitude. For the record, he did not write these remarks. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention his early morning tomfoolery during our weather calls. I know many of you will miss the jokes and the puns the most. Chris says he's leaving the district to pursue writing full-time. Perhaps a book of his famous school cancellation wisecracks is in order. Chris, thank you for your dedication and service to our entire school community. We wish you the best in the next part of your life. You will be truly missed. Next, I would like to invite everyone to join Community Conversations, a panel event aimed at addressing concerns around youth health, mental health, within the State College community from 6 to 8 p.m. tomorrow at the State High Theater. It's the State Theater. I said State, yeah. SCASD Director of Student Services, Stephanie Bieber, who helped coordinate the event, will be on the panel of experts working in the field of youth mental health in schools and community. Hosted by State College Borough and the Center for Alternatives in Community Justice, CAJCJ. This event is meant to provide the audience with increased knowledge about SCASD's, Penn State's, and the community's current programming for managing youth mental health concerns. There also will be opportunities for the audience to pose questions and concerns to the panelists. Another note, I would like to take this moment to note that March is Women's History Month. The SCASD schools will proudly celebrate the accomplishments of women in various ways, including SCASD Women in Leadership Stories, celebrating SCASD alumni profiles, daily morning meetings to discuss figures and quotes, read alouds, student-led projects include informational sharing. I also want to extend my heartfelt respect to the women who serve on this board, each one a shining example of excellence in civic leadership. Lastly, I recently had the opportunity to attend a book launch party at the Penn State Bookstore store for State High Junior Patrick Sinclair's novel, Chalk Wars. Thank you to everyone in our community who came out to support Patrick's book, a tremendous accomplishment for a writer of any age, let alone a high school student. So congratulations on the book.
Yeah, that was impressive. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I'd like to welcome Elijah Carey as student representative from Delta for the next stretch here on the board. We welcome your insights and perspectives, so feel free to raise your hand or get my attention and contribute at any point during discussions. And Elijah is going to share a student initiatives update with us this evening.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Bader. Our indoor track and field teams enjoyed memorable performances at the state indoor championships this past weekend. The boys team finished second overall, led by senior Jesse Myers, who won a trio of medals topped by a gold in the 200 meters with a new state meet record time of 21.08 seconds. He also was second in the 60-meter dash, missing first by only 1/100th of a second. State High silver medals continued as the distance medley relay team of Ryan Coughlin, Jesse Myers, Brian Caldwell, and Luke Bradbury won second place. Additionally, the boys 4x800 relay team consisting of Owen Coughlin, Luke Bradbury, Ryan Caldwell, and Stephen Fowler earned silver. And finally, Adam Bell won silver in the pole vault. The girls team finished sixth overall, led by silver medal performance in the 4x800 relay with a team of Devon Jackson, Evie Youngkin, Devyani Wadia, and Brooke Schellenberger. Additionally, the girls' distance medley relay team was second with the team of Devyani Wadia, Sadie Coker, Evie Youngkin, and Devon Jackson. Congratulations to our indoor track and field student athletes. 86 chess enthusiasts gathered in the State High Performing Arts Center on February 25th, 25 for the district's annual chess tournament organized by the district's Learning Enrichment/Gifted Support Department. The elementary school and middle school winners are Inuo Leo from Radio Park, Ethan Wang from Spring Creek, and a tie for third with Sylvan Dexter and Michael Troyan. The middle schools, first Timothy Chen from Mount Nittany, Luca Wright from Delta, and Eric Goldstein from Park Forest. In addition, 9 high school players competed informally while serving as tournament assistants. A full story is posted on the district website front page. Congratulations to our students who excelled in the recent Math 24 competition hosted by Central Intermediate Unit 10. Delta program student Kaya Mazzara won the gold medal in the 6th grade competition, while in the elementary competition, Radio Park 5th grader Ethan Pazalski topped the field as the champion, and Coral Street 5th grader Bella Bao made it to the finals. Overall, 64 4th and 5th graders participated. We are proud of all our participants and salute them for their remarkable achievements. Congratulations to the high school DECA chapter for its exceptional showing at the recent DECA state competition. State High placed a chapter record-breaking 58 finalists and 45 qualifiers for the international conference later this year in Orlando, Florida.
All right, Jackie, do you have any legislative update for us?
Just one. I just wanted to let the board know, if you didn't know already, that the Auditor General of Pennsylvania released an audit of cyber charter schools in the state and found that increased enrollment as well as increased tuition rates have led to significant increases in revenue, expenditures, and fund balances of the audited cyber charter schools during the audit period. No new news, but like official news from the state with numbers and research attached to it from the auditor that adds to the momentum that has been building behind cyber charter reform. So just wanted to let you all know that came out February 20th. It is riveting reading if you find yourself needing something to read. So
Yeah, that's great. If they have identified it, they can think about whether they need to do things about that. Gretchen and Peter, do you have any updates from COG?
I do not.
So I do not have anything directly from COG, but I have something that I wanted to share with the board that I think we should all just be aware of. And I put it in the COG report because there's a couple links to different articles that I suggest we all read. Amy will remember this. So in 2023, the board was introduced to Ron Ferris, the CEO of Bobby Rahal Automotive Group and owner of Ferris Land Development. At that time, he gave a preliminary presentation to the board, and he had asked the board to consider hearing a more formal presentation at a later date for a local economic revitalization tax assistance, or LRTA, a program intended to phase in taxes on improvements to a property over a period of up to 10 years. At the time, Ferris said he expected the tax abatement would need to apply to about 24 of the 61 acres that he's planning on developing, and asked the board to consider hearing a formal presentation from Delta Development Group. That was in 2023. The board has not heard from him since. There's been no communications. But I recently noticed in the second article that I put in the COG report that Ferris Land Development was recently awarded a $250,000 grant for realignment and enhancements of Spring Valley Road along the Shiloh Road corridor from a multimodal transportation fund grant. So I'm guessing that at some point the board will be hearing from Ferris again because this grant was recently awarded and the development seems to be picking up momentum. So I would expect that we would maybe hear from him once again. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much. Up next, we now have time for public comment, which we typically do for 30 minutes. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes for items related to board business that are not a consent or action item this evening. For those items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item. We've moved to a new sign-up system so that people who are certain they're going to ask to present public comment can sign up in advance. So we're going to give priority to those individuals this evening. So first on my list, I have Alana Chesney. Are you here to make a comment? So if you would come to the podium and share your name and where you reside in the district, and you'll have 3 minutes. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Alana Chesney. I live in Boalsburg and I'm a parent of 2 children in the district. I'm a licensed psychologist, and as part of my job, I work on a gender diverse care team providing mental health treatment to individuals who are gender diverse. The last time I spoke at a school board meeting was in advocacy for a policy for transgender students and employees as a co-chair of the LGBTQ and gender equity work group. I come today regarding the recent announcements from the district about policy regarding the use of legal names in the SCASD system. I want to start with my gratitude that after the initial notification and in response to community reaction and feedback, the policy was reevaluated and changed to allow for more flexibility that better responds to the needs of gender expansive students. I'm aware that things are still being ironed out, and I appreciate that the delay of the policy implementation was made during this process. Nevertheless, I think it is important to point out the concerning way that this policy was initially decided upon and communicated to students and families, leading some in our community to feel scared and unsafe. It was startling to learn that students were informed about this change in policy in the morning at school, before families, and with initial planned implementation in the same week. Some students had to hear that news, fear for their privacy and potential safety in school, and then be expected to go about the rest of their day. I know families whose children felt scared to go to school on Friday morning. Friday morning, unsure if they would be greeted with a dead name when they opened up their computers and be outed to their classmates. In the end, that was not the case, but the reevaluation and delay of the policy was not communicated to families prior to sending their children to school on Friday. Communication regarding this initial policy and ongoing attempts to adapt it were insufficient and untimely, leading to more worry. In addition to providing more time for community feedback, it would be good to engage more shareholders early on. Therefore, I also urge you to bring back the community equity work groups, some of which have not met over the past year. These are matters that we would have happily consulted with the district on, as we've done in the past. Although I've heard that this policy change is not related to the recent political climate or executive orders from the White House, I find it alarming that it was introduced now within a planned immediate implementation. While I understand that there are various medical, legal, and logistical reasons for this change, not enough care was given to how these changes would be perceived as abandoning the security of trans students. The transgender and gender expansive communities are being targeted in ongoing awful, egregious attacks by our government. And school is a place where all students should feel safe. To quote the mission statement of the school district, to ensure that every student has opportunities to grow, thrive, and fulfill their potential through caring, responsive education. And I think that we can all agree that our transgender and gender expansive students deserve and need our care more now than ever. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Michelle Lee Garrett on my list.
I'm also going to request that my child be allowed to speak after me, if that's okay, even though they hadn't previously signed up.
If
Just
there's
so
no
that they
objection
have-
from the board, I think that's fine.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So hello, my name is Michelle Lee Garrett. My pronouns are she, her. I am a board member with Cinder LGBT+. I am parent to 2 children in the district, including 1 gender expansive child. I live in College Township, and I am a proud transgender woman. I am also here to express concern over the recent decision regarding the use of legal names and how this decision was handled. We are living in a moment of profound fear for trans, non-binary, and gender expansive people, especially youth who are uniquely vulnerable and have consistently been targeted through anti-trans policies and recent federal orders. A recent article in the Cinder Daily Times explored the impacts of the current anti-trans climate on our trans community here locally, including youth in this district, including one mother who spoke about how her trans child had been planning suicide in response to the current climate. To quote from that story, "Our household is loving and supportive, but the outside onslaught is pummeling them. It's pummeling them." That is the context in which this decision, which would have disproportionately and negatively impacted trans, non-binary, and gender expansive students, was announced. Making such a decision in this environment gave the appearance of carelessness regarding these forces pummeling trans students. I submit that it's also contrary to the board's own policies. To quote from Policy Code 250, the board supports students' preference to be addressed by preferred name, pronouns, and other terms designated by them. This foundational respect does not rely on a legal name change or gender marker change on official documents. Emphasis mine. While some of this decision has since been reversed, for which I am also appreciative and grateful, I still nevertheless have concerns about how this decision was reached and how it was announced, as well as the intention to force transgender students to carry student IDs bearing their dead names, which is a source of daily pain and harm that can otherwise be avoided. In many ways, SCASD, it is worth calling attention to and being grateful for, has been a leader in equity for trans students, including the 2021 passage of that very policy I just quoted. And so I urge the board to continue their leadership in remaining a bulwark against the anti-trans forces pummeling our trans students, including by reconsidering the need for transgender students to constantly encounter their dead names on student IDs. Thank you.
So, oh, that's loud. I'm not sure how to continue from there.
Just say whatever's on your mind, though.
So also in regards to these decisions, I remember hearing it in school, and while I don't use a like different name than my legal name, it still sent a lot of alarm and a lot of fear for me. And it's like really hard not to spend my entire lunch thinking about it and feeling scared. This is not what school is supposed to be. School is supposed to be a place where people can learn and where people can be equal to each other in that regard. It shouldn't be a place where people can't focus on their schoolwork because they're too busy like being scared for their life about everything else happening. And to bring this into the school space is just one less place that would feel safe for people. There's already a lot of people who don't feel safe in their homes in regards to these issues. And schools have kind of become like a safer place for them. Like if you take that away as well, then that's going to do a lot of harm for a lot of people. And so I really hope you guys reconsider with the IDs.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Next up on my list, I have Kat Cook who had signed up.
Good evening, everyone. I am Kat Cook, she, her pronouns. I am here in two capacities tonight. One is the proud mom of an LGBT plus junior in the district, and the other is as the executive director of Center LGBT plus. I am here to speak to messages that were sent to parents and students regarding use of legal names. There is one simple yet profoundly impactful action that we can take to make a tangible difference in the lives of our students, recognizing and using their chosen names on their student IDs and in areas where names are displayed or referred to by anyone working with them. For many students, their chosen name is more than just a name. It is a core part of who they are. It reflects their gender identity and personal journey. It allows them to express their authentic self, free from constraints of societal norms or expectations. When students are called by their chosen name, they feel recognized, affirmed, and empowered. And when their name appears on their ID, something they carry with them daily, it is a visible acknowledgement of their humanity and dignity. However, for students whose chosen name is not recognized, the impact can be profound. It sends a message, albeit unintentionally, that who they are is not worthy of validation or respect. It can cause feelings of alienation, stress, and insecurity, emotions that no student should have to bear in an environment that is supposed to support their growth. Recognizing chosen names on IDs is not just an issue of respect, it is an issue of mental health. Studies have shown that when students feel respected and validated in their identities, they experience improved self-esteem, better academic outcomes, and greater overall well-being. It was recently posted on social media by a member of this board that our organization was consulted on changes related to the student's preferred name, and I can assure you that we were not. We were only informed after the release of this information. Had we been consulted, we would have been able to share our deep concerns. I hope you will truly listen to the concerns brought forward here tonight. Let's be the district that stands proudly for inclusivity. Let's be the district that leads by example. And let's be the district that embraces every student for who they are. And let's start by recognizing and using their chosen names on their IDs. Thank you.
Next up on my list, I have Dempsey Young. Are they here to make a statement?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Dempsey Young. I'm a licensed psychologist here in the community specializing in LGBTQ competent care as well as trauma-informed therapy. And I'm here to also talk about the issues of using dead names on IDs as well as incorrect pronouns. And forcing students to use dead names and incorrect pronouns is a direct impact to their ability to learn, grow, and succeed. As a psychologist, I have seen firsthand the profound effects that the invalidation of a student's identity can have on their mental health. We are not talking about minor mistakes. We are talking about the deliberation to refuse the recognition of and respect a person's fundamental identity. A name and pronoun are not just mere labels, they're cornerstones of a student's self-worth and dignity. To be misgendered or called by a dead name is not simply an error of language. It is a deep violation of a student's identity, and it has significant and damaging consequences. We have plenty of evidence from decades of psychological research that consistently shows the detrimental impact of invalidation on mental health. Studies including the one from American Academy of Pediatrics and the National LGBTQ Task Force reveal that transgender and gender nonconforming students who are misgendered or forced to use dead names experience significant higher levels of anxiety, depression, and increased suicidal ideation. They are more likely to disengage in school, to isolate themselves, and to experience academic decline. In the most extreme cases, the emotional toil of each rejection can lead to even worse tragic outcomes. But this just isn't about numbers or studies. It is about the real lives of real students, our students. Every time a student is called by a wrong name or referred by a pronoun that doesn't align with their identity, it chips at their self-esteem. It reinforces a message that they are not valued, that their existence is not fully recognized, and that they must somehow fit into a mold that is not their own. This is not a neutral act. It is an act of harm. We must ask ourselves, what are we as educators, as a community, as mental health professionals willing to sacrifice for the sake of upholding policies or procedures that invalidate the identities of our students? How can we claim to foster an environment of learning, growth, and equity when we refuse to honor the most basic and personal aspect of who a student is? The science is clear, people. Affirming a student's name and pronouns has a profound positive effect on their mental health and academic performance. It empowers them to align and engage in their education fully and to develop the confidence to be their authentic selves. It helps them feel seen, respected, and safe. I implore you as decision makers in our educational system to consider the long-term impact of your actions. This is not just a matter of personal belief or administrative inconvenience. It's the future of our students, their belonging, and their safety in the very environment that is supposed to nurture them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Britta Petritz, I have next on my list.
My name is Britta Petrich. I live in Patton Township. I'm here tonight to express a need to implement specialized social media curriculum into the school district. As a mom of 2 middle school students, I have found it difficult to make decisions and manage the use of social media for my kids. This difficulty goes far beyond the reach of my own home. Countrywide, parents are struggling to help youth navigate this ever-present part of their lives. In 2023, the Surgeon General of the United States put out an advisory regarding social media and youth mental health. In 2024, another advisory came out, this time about parents under pressure. Listed among the stressors is difficulty managing technology and social media. I wonder what the school district could do to support both populations, students and parents, in navigating the complexities of social media. Last November, I attended the social media event held at the high school where Officer John Aston presented alarming information. By and large, students are encountering adult problems that they are not equipped to handle. Sadly, we all know this and more. In January, I attended a Real Conversations for parents about balancing our digital lives. Paul McCormick at Delta, who I've spoken with, is teaching a class called Digital Citizenship. These are all positive actions, and I applaud the work being done. How can we do more? And what else is the state of Pennsylvania doing? I recently created and guided my 8th grade son through a homegrown, at best, curriculum that I developed based on topical reading, research, and my own instincts. I reached out to Officer Aston to share what I had done and get his perspective. He championed my work, and that has given me the drive to stand here before you with the desire to the district to educate students about social media within the classroom setting. All students need a place where they can learn and where they can talk to their peers in a guided manner about the intricacies of social media and the experiences that they are all encountering. Author of The Anxious Generation, Jonathan Haidt recommends that youth wait until age 16 to use social media. Imagine if, as part of new social norms, students were educated before they actually get on social media. Students can connect and have fun with their friends online and be equipped with the skills and resources to know what to do when things go wrong. Together as State College Area School District, we could play an integral role in keeping our students safe online and be on the forefront of change. In closing, I ask the board to consider the need for implemented specialized social media curriculum into the school district. And if a plan is not already in place, to please create a position or coordinator so that more work beyond what is already being done can continue in the classroom. The future mental and emotional health of our students depends on making this a priority, and parents and caregivers need your support. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Carrie Weisman on my list. Is she here this evening?
Hello, my name is Carrie Weisman. And as you speak, I just hope that everybody will speak directly into your mics. I'm somewhat hearing impaired. And those of you who've spoken to your mics, I just applaud you. But as you can hear the difference when somebody doesn't. Some of us out here cannot hear unless you're really speaking into your mic. Thank you. What I really wanted to say, however, tonight is I am the chair of the board of Center LGBT+, and I am speaking on behalf of that organization. We hope the school district will remain a strong advocate and supporter of all LGBT+ students. The need for school districts to be proactive, thoughtful, and unwavering in their support of trans, non-binary, and other minority students is more important than ever. Trans and non-binary students are terrified right now. Quite frankly, as a lesbian woman, I'm 70 years old, not a vulnerable teenager. We're frightened too that our rights will be taken away. So the students really are very vulnerable. They're being targeted by federal policies and that deny their existence, their rights, and their dignity. This affects not only them, but their friends as well, and their families. They are looking to all of us, the school officials, the community leaders, parents, teachers, allies, and friends to stand up for them. Being intentional and consistent in using the students' chosen names and pronouns and respecting the students' cultures are simple but in very important ways the district can stand up for some of its most vulnerable students. The announcement that the district would reverse its recent decision to enforce the use of the student's legal name in PowerSchool and other applications is a good step. We appreciate your willingness to hear the feedback from the community and respond appropriately. Nonetheless, the intention to still require a student's legal name, or for trans students, what would be their dead name, on their official school ID remains deeply concerning. It's tantamount to being consistently dead named, misgendered, and disrespected by school every single time they look at their ID, which is every day. It will contribute to the alienation, isolation, and disenfranchisement of vulnerable students. Simply put, it causes harm at a time when too much harm is already being perpetrated outside of our school by an actively hostile national climate. especially in light of the fact that a school ID is not used for federal, state, or collegiate organizations. We urge the school district to find a solution that will afford trans, non-binary, and other minority students the respect of their correct names on their student IDs. If testing requires legal names, certainly those administering tests can be given alias names in addition to what is on the birth certificate, as has been done in the past. Thank you for staying true to your policy of serving the needs of all your students, including LGBT+ students and other minority students. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So based on our 30-minute time allotment, I think we have time for one more speaker. I just want to check if we have people online as well. We do have another opportunity for public comment this evening. This is a dual meeting. We have our committee of the whole meeting where we discuss a variety of items, and then there's a break and there's another opportunity for public comment, and then we have additional items. So I apologize that we have a linked agenda tonight, but we do have time for potentially one more speaker. Do we have anyone online who's interested in making a public comment? Not right now. So if there's one additional person that would like to speak now, we could do that. And I will be opening public comment again after committee of the whole. Okay. I just want to make sure I don't want to cut anybody off. Okay.
Okay. I would like to make a comment. I appreciate all the feedback that the board has received, I have received, causing us to pivot and change our processes for legal names. One of the things that we have changed is IDs. So the IDs will be preferred names. The only way you would be able to get, if you need a legal name or your legal name for any of the reasons that we listed prior, they will be able to go to computer services to get that. Okay, but for now, all students will be receiving their preferred names or whatever they have in the computer at that time. Okay, so I just want to make that clarification for you. As you can see, we are changing and pivoting and trying to meet the needs of all our students. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. So with that, we're going to, oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
I just wanted to clarify. So students will be issued a name with their preferred name on it. And if they need an additional ID with their legal name for any reason, they'll be able to obtain one through IT.
Correct.
So the default will be their preferred name.
Thank you.
That'll be the standard issue.
And if they don't have a preferred name, it will be their legal name, which is the preferred. When we, well, it was in the email that I sent. So it's still about those things that were listed in the email, is why we were making the process change and issues with PowerSchool. It's the thanks to our IT department that they were able to write code to make the changes that we're now implementing now. So we had to reconfigure our on our end PowerSchool to fit the needs of our community and our students. So it took a extreme effort by our IT department to make those things occur.
I think some of our, so I don't want to start to initiate a dialogue with the entire group, but I will clarify. I know some of you may be in the community and not parents in our school, so you may not be aware of the email that Mr. Johnson is referring to. There are some instances where students, and these are just a couple examples, this is not exhaustive, but students who go to take their SAT, if they don't have a driver's license or a passport, another photo, a legal ID, they can use their school ID. And so we have had students turned away from the SAT because they had a mismatch between their documentation. It's also an issue for students who are diabetic, severe allergy, other types of serious medical conditions that may need emergency meds, emergency on the spot. And so that if there's any confusion, that could be a really important concern. So really, we're trying to protect students. It's not, that's the goal in making sure that everybody's clear about what belongs to who and things like that. So I do appreciate the administration's efforts. I know IT has worked really hard. Vendors that offer student information systems don't always offer all the things that we want. And sometimes we have to make requests and figure out ways to make it work with the way we want it to work. And with that, I'll stop going off script and have us move on with our agenda. We're going to start off with culture, climate, and learning. We have a special education update. And Dr. Bucher, Dr. Hammerslaw Quick, Dr. Pringle, and Ms. Yoder are going to provide an update on that.
All right. We're ready to roll. Good evening, everybody. Michelle and I and Jonathan and Danielle are here to share our annual update with all of you. We're going to start with our yearly report of special education services across the district and review some data trends that we've noticed over the past 5 years. And then we'll move into reviewing our action items that we've identified through our special education leadership team that was a result of the GSEA audit. Okay, so let's start first with just a breakdown of our special education department so you can get a clear picture of the faculty and staff as they're laid out across the district. We have 2 administrators, Michelle and myself, and 3 secretaries were housed here in Panorama Village. We have 95 professional contracts. This is an increase from last year. We had 91 contracts last year. Those 4 additional contracts, one of them is at Park Forest Elementary, one's at Radio Park, one is split between Mount Nittany Middle School and Park Forest Middle School, and one is at Delta Middle. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we break down each individual building. In addition to the special education teachers, we have people that specialize in vision support, hearing, behavior specialists, curriculum, our dean, our psychologist, our school pathologists. You can see the list on that slide. Also, we have 157 special education paraprofessionals, K-12 across the district. Within that group of 157, one of those individuals is a Brailleist and 2 of them are sign language interpreters. And then also we have occupational therapy and physical therapy across the district that are contracted services.
When we look at the overall enrollment, this data is based on the December 1st, 2024 count, which is. There you go. Here we go. Can you hear me now? I can. Okay. I'll start again. No, you're fine. So this data that I'm presenting here is based on the December 1st, 2024 data, which we are required to submit our counts to Pennsylvania Department of Education every year on a yearly average there. As of December 1st, we had 982 students identified with special education services. This is an increase of 67 special education students from last year to this year. Last year, we had 915. We were just able to pull our data from our special programs tonight, and we now have approximately 1,060 students. So that's an even about 70 more students since December that have been identified with special education needs. You'll see on here, there are lines that have blocked off some of the numbers. For those lines, that there are less than 10 students identified with that particular disability category. Those categories are deaf-blind, hearing impaired, orthopedic impairment, traumatic brain injury, visual impairment, including blindness. It's important to note that the state does not require reporting of the twice exceptional students. So these are students that are identified with gifted needs as well as special education needs. We are beginning to identify these and see the number increase. As of December 1st, we had 51 students across the district identified as twice exceptional. So they need both gifted services and special education services. I don't know that number now, but I do know I identified 3 earlier today. So I know that number is increasing from there.
So Michelle, can I ask you one quick clarifying question on that?
Sure.
Just because conversationally, we've talked a little bit about twice exceptional kids.
Yeah.
To include kids that have 504 plans sometimes, but in this case, we're strictly talking about IEPs for both ends of the spectrum.
Exactly.
Okay, I
These
just
are
wanna-
just IEPs. This
For our
does not.
community, I want to
include
clarify
504.
that because I know we have
Yeah.
quite a number of families that may fall in that slightly different category. And
Right.
moving forward, we might want to, I don't know, figure out how we want to define the difference between those two groups so that we're clear whenever we're talking about them. I know we all
Yeah.
use that term as a bucket, but
Yeah.
it doesn't matter whether we're talking about kids with 504s or
Yeah.
full-fledged IEPs. So thank you for clarifying.
Absolutely.
Thanks. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. Go back a slide. So when a student is found eligible for special education, the team develops programming to support their needs. Special education is driven by 2 main components. The first being the type of support. So for an example, a student may receive learning support or autistic support or hearing support. That's just a few that we provide. The second component is the level of support of those services. So there are 3 levels of support: itinerant, supplemental, and full-time. And when we discuss some of the schools, we'll get into that more. But itinerant level means that the student is in the regular education environment 80% or more of the time. For supplemental, that student is in the regular education environment 40 to 79% of the time. And full-time special education students are in the regular education environment 39% or less from that. So an example, if I have an IEP, I'm in the regular ed environment 55% of the time. I receive a supplemental level of support. Here are the graphs that compare, blue is the SCASD numbers and red is the Pennsylvania state numbers. These are always a year behind because we do not have the Pennsylvania state data. So next year we'll be able to add. We are always significantly lower with our percentage than the Pennsylvania state numbers for special education. This is really what we feel is in due part because of our strong implementation of MTSS framework and resources available across the district to support our students. And this gives the overall growth in the percentages. So about 4 years ago, 2020, we were at about 11.6% of our total population was identified with special education services. Now we're up to 14.35, but this is still less than the state average, but we're seeing that increase across the board. The average LEA enrollment across the board of both special ed and non-special ed students is about the same. It's a little higher at this point this year, but overall it's about the same as well.
Okay, so whenever we take that data to try to identify some of the trends, we can see from that between 2020 and 2024, we're still seeing, again, that steady increase in special education students and our percentages climbing. In addition to that, we did share last year as well that we're seeing an increase in the number of students that are identified with autism, and we're still seeing that this year with our December 1 count from 2024. Also the decrease in the number of students identified with specific learning disabilities, and you can see that trend on the slide kind of slowly going down. I think one of the things that we're often talking about with our students with an autism diagnosis, early intervention meetings just happened in February, and a lot of students are coming in before they even reach kindergarten already with that autism diagnosis. So we're seeing that increase. In addition, with the decrease in students identified with specific learning disabilities, we really go back to our MTSS model and how strong that is in the elementary buildings and how that continues to decrease because we're addressing those needs early on.
Over the next several slides, we share out the breakout of our special ed programming for each school. So elementary schools, middle, high, Delta included from there. Coming back to that itinerant supplemental and full-time support, when you see on these slides, it indicates an itinerant autistic emotional support teacher. That means the vast majority of students on their caseload receive that itinerant level of support. It's important to note that our special education teachers can provide any service that we provide in special education, as well as be a teacher of itinerant supplemental or full-time students. Caseloads are determined by the level of service. So an example would be if you provide autistic support for students, if you have itinerant students only, you can have up to 12 students on your caseload. If you have only supplemental or full-time students for each of those categories, your maximum number of students is only 8. So that's why we see an increased need in personnel because of the number of students that need autistic support services. So these are the numbers for Coral Street and Easterly Parkway that have stayed the same. Ferguson and Grays Woods have stayed the same. The one thing on this slide, last year Ferguson was pretty high in their percentage, and they are starting to decrease in the percentage of students identified with special needs there. And then Mount Nittany Elementary and Park Forest Elementary. The one classroom that's missing on this slide is our Park Forest supplemental classroom, which is the new classroom. So I will make sure that's referenced in the future for that. And then we have Radio Park and Spring Creek here. In Radio Park, we had an increase from 2 to 3 this year for full-time autistic support and emotional support classrooms. That's based on the needs coming in, primarily our younger kids. We are seeing a big class of students coming in next year for kindergarten as well. But we're prepared for them and we're excited to have them. So.
Okay, in the secondary buildings, we didn't see a lot of fluctuation between the middle schools in terms of the percentages. One of the additional positions that we added this year is split between the 2 middle schools. That's why you see a 1.5 autistic support and emotional support teacher. So we have that additional personnel supporting our caseloads in those 2 buildings. The big difference between the 2 middle schools is that Park Forest houses a full-time autistic support classroom, specialized classroom, and Mount Nittany Middle School has that same autistic support classroom, but also our multiple disabilities classroom. And then at Delta Middle, we also added an additional teacher there for this school year so that there are 2 at the middle and 2 at the high school. These percentages are comparable to last year. They're a little bit higher than the other buildings. And last year we did comment on perhaps the why behind that. Could be families looking for that smaller community as they make that big transition from 5th grade to 6th grade. And Dr. Downs and I, spoke earlier this week about that too. And it seems to be a similar trend that is continuing for this cohort of students that are joining Delta next year.
Heather, could I just ask, you said that there were 2 at Delta Middle and 2 at Delta High, so that represents 4 people total?
Correct.
In Delta, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd ask you a question about this, about the, how this is evaluated every year. Because when I looked at this particular and compared it to the other middle school, right, the middle school and then the high school, the proportion there, paraprofessional to special ed student for the middle school is 18-1 compared to 4-1 in the other schools. And so that sticker view
stands out.
Really jumps out. And I'm wondering what sort of difference we need to understand, because without context, you
It's-
know, and
yeah.
like we've had all this discussion about Delta and equity, et cetera. It's like,
Mhm.
so it's hard for me to understand why that
Just
difference
based on the number.
exists.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. The two, if I just go back one slide, so the Park Forest Middle School and Mount Ninny Middle School, they both have specialized classrooms. So, and that's one thing that Delta Middle and Delta High School does not have. So they don't have any specialized programming for students that have a higher level of need. As Michelle had shared, we have the differences between the level of support of itinerant, supplemental, and full-time. And so that does impact caseloads. The majority of the students that are at Delta Middle and Delta High School receive itinerant level support, which means that the ratio can be higher for teacher to student whenever you would compare it to a student who might have full-time support. As you know, the example Michelle shared with autistic support, you have 12 as your max for itinerant, and then it backs down to 8 as the students have more need.
Also, within the specialized classrooms, there's an increased need for paraprofessionals to meet the individual students' needs. So those individualized classrooms, they may have 8 students, but they also may have 5, 6 paraprofessionals to provide a more intensive educational based on the students' need in those programs.
Just to follow up with what Peter said, even when you look at the paraprofessional to student ratio, even in elementary schools, most are 6 or under, with the exception of Delta. So do we think we need extra support at Delta to help with this, especially if the classes are continuing to grow?
I mean, it's something that we analyze whenever we have the next cohort of students coming up. We do look and see which of those 5th graders might have the need for additional para support or a personal care assistant if that's necessary. And then we do plan for that staffing. So it is something that we're looking at.
Yeah, I
but
think
that's just for this year. So, I mean, it could change next year.
I mean, I think Michelle's point was those, like the autistic support classrooms, they may have 5 paraprofessionals, but not always. And often that is dictated by the individual IEP for select students. Some students are designated to have a one-on-one paraprofessional. So that part isn't about ratios of the classroom. That's a little bit about what particular students are in that classroom that year, correct? Because
Correct.
they have their own, based on their personal needs, they're
Correct.
assigned a one-to-one para that would move with them through potentially
High
through certain
school.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depending on the situation and how their progression goes.
And I think like, just so that I'm clear, right? I mean, obviously, like I went to, like, I have a thing for Delta, right? Because I went there and, hi, Elijah. You know, I really, I think that the context behind it is a little bit lost. And I want to be very clear. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm not trying to like cause a thing. I really just want to understand the differences between the school that can drive the difference in the service so that we're making sure, and that my question in my email asking about, you know, the reevaluation each year that comes up, and you said, yes, we do that each year, is that we're just as informed as we can be. And I know you only have so much space on the slide,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So.
So the ratio of teachers at the high school or the middle school for itinerant is what are their caseloads compared to Delta?
Say that again. I just
So
didn't hear
how
you.
many, how many, how many students are assigned to an itinerant teachers at the middle schools versus at Delta? Can you give me a ballpark?
Ballpark. So when we look at the two Delta Middle and Delta High School, you can look and make a broad assumption that the 36 is divided by 2 case managers. I mean, that's not an exact science in terms of that. And then when you look at the high school, they have 9 learning support teachers across the 4 grade levels. So they have 2.5 roughly per grade level. So they have a few more, but there are more students.
In the
Answer your question?
Yeah, and to compare to the elementary for the teacher aspect of it, itinerant elementary teachers, whether they're autistic support, emotional support, or itinerant, typically range from about 17 students on their caseload to right now I have a high of 25, 26 maybe on their caseload. So that's pretty comparable to the number of students at Delta on their teacher caseload.
Thanks for making those clarifications as we go along.
Could I also, one other question I had, do the Delta High students have the opportunity to access the specialized services that are offered at the regular high school, I guess, at State High?
Yes, so we do have students that access Delta High School and State High.
They can use,
Yes.
they can
Yeah.
use like.
Yeah,
the-
and it's really
the
driven.
Special ed service, okay.
Yeah, by their IEP team.
Okay.
The next slide just has the high school numbers. Again, no changes in terms of staffing for that building for this current year. Numbers have kind of remained a little bit, well, status quo really since last year. The one shift that we did make to the staffing from the previous year was we did shift one teacher up to Lifelink Penn State so that we have two professional staff members so that we can make sure that we are accommodating any increase in numbers due to the age of majority changing to 22. And then for related services, this is just a rundown of the number of students that receive each type of those services. As I said previously, our occupational therapy and physical therapy are provided by contracted services. OT is through Penn Highlands and the IU. And then physical therapy, we have one independent contractor as well as the IU. For speech and language services, we have 11 of our own pathologists within the district. For vision support services, we have one vision support teacher, and then our hearing support teacher is also a SCASD employee. Just kind of a breakdown of their numbers.
Any questions about the data that we have presented so far? Yeah,
Yeah, you answered a lot of the questions that I was going to ask, so I appreciate that. The only thing is on this slide, the one that you just talked about, the vision support service, is that a number of students? Because the first slide, I had a question on that. There was none because I figured that you didn't want, there wasn't that many. But then on this slide, you have 29, so
Yes.
I didn't understand that.
Yeah, so this slide, the number 29 is the number of students that our vision support teacher works directly with. The first slide with the hash marks, the reason those were there is because the number of students that have a vision disability is less than 10. So we might have students who have a primary disability category that isn't a vision disability. They might have it as a secondary category. And so our vision support teacher would still service them. Whenever we do those the data reporting to the state, they only take the first disability category. So if students have 2 or 3 disability categories, they're not included in that count.
I see.
It's a great
Okay.
question.
Thank you.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, the second piece of our presentation is talking about the GSCA recommendations and action steps. So as you know, the Global Special Education Associates completed a special education audit last year, and one of the recommendations was the development of a special education leadership team, or the CELT team, as we call it. This CELT team includes stakeholders from kindergarten to 12th grade stakeholders across the school district. We have made progress to this goal. So far, we've met 4 times from this recommendation, and we've developed a team across the district that includes classroom teachers, special education teachers, paraprofessionals, administrators, also directors throughout the district. The team has met 4 times, and we've identified 3 focus areas: the communication, the data desegregation, and professional development, which will also connect to MTSS as we move forward. The CELT team does guide the development of the action items for the remaining recommendations for GSCA audit. So the first focus area is the communication. By the CELT team is the communication. Progress in this area includes there's a monthly special education newsletter that is shared with K-12 special education department and building administrators. There's monthly special education department meetings at each level, elementary, middle, and high school. This year, we were actually able to have a department meeting for a full day with all levels together, which was very beneficial for all of our staff and us. And then the next steps is really to develop a system of and practices for other departments to receive and respond to special education information, including all teachers across the board, and leveraging the members of our CELT team to help provide that information out there in our schools.
Okay, and then the next area of focus that the CELT team identified was having to do with data, which did align with the GSEA recommendations. So far this year, we have made the transition to PowerSchool Special Programs, which is IEP Writer was our previous software system. So it's where we are housing all of our special education documents and are reporting to the state. So we're aligning that with our student information system. So the data is all in one place, and we're getting there. Year zero, they call it, but it's been a challenge, but it's been good. We're getting there. In terms of elementary level, some of the elementary teachers and personnel are included in the advanced tiers for MTSS. And as we roll that out and further develop that for secondary, that is the goal, is to include secondary personnel in those advanced tier meetings as well. And then in addition, Michelle and I are in the process of pooling all of the special education evaluations to review them of those students who are Black, Hispanic, and multiracial, to see if we can find root causes and trends, and that aligns with our goal 1 of our comprehensive plan. Okay, and then on this slide, we just, the next focus area was professional development, which also ties into one of the recommendations from GSEA. At the end of the last academic year, we completed professional development with our A team, focused on culturally responsive school discipline. In addition, we're working through the MTSS team. I don't know if Danielle, if you want me to scooch this over. Right.
So as the CELT team continues, what we have found as we're working, and Jonathan and I have both been to as many of those meetings as we can, is there's a lot of overlap, because with gifted on the one side and special ed on the other side as part of our advanced tiers, they're still a very big part of our MTSS. So we have K-12 MTSS systems coming together. We have a pretty solid district leadership team for behavior, and we're this year working towards K-12 academic. We've partnered with Patton to come in to continue to work with that, but special ed is a part of that with us, and then eventually they will become a subcommittee. So we are moving, we really have to get the MTSS fully, that umbrella fully developed, and special ed, the CELT team is coming along with them, but we want to make sure that that is the component that then they are a part of having those common conversations. As many of you know, the disconnect for some time has been the special ed has been on its own little island, and they're doing their own little, and they need to do differentiated programs to target the needs. But we're trying to align that system so that the special ed child is getting what they need in the regular classroom, and then the additional supports are really geared towards the needs, and the MTSS system will do that.
Okay, so what questions do you have for us?
I just have one more, and it's in relation to Delta again. I'm just curious, the other middle schools have MTSS interventionists, right? They have people that work specifically with that. Does Delta, the middle or high, have a specific dedicated MTSS employee?
I'm not certain. I mean,
I'm just
from
curious.
from the special ed lens, in the middle school, we have special education interventionists. Delta does not have a specific interventionist from the special education umbrella, if you will. Both of the two teachers, for example, in the middle school, they do deliver those interventions as they're identified in the students' IEPs. But in terms of MTSS and building wide, I'm not quite sure where they are in that process.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for the special ed team? Okay, I really appreciate it. That's really thorough. I know you guys are tackling a lot of change
Yeah.
And I really appreciate the hard work that's happening with that. Thanks. We're going to move on to facilities and grounds. We're going to have Mike Fisher provide several updates on the high school sign, Mount Nittany Elementary project, and the Park Forest Middle School.
Okay, so first, we're gonna look at, talk about the high school sign. So, put a memo out that kind of outlays, right, kind of our current design, that's the most cost effective. We've gone through some different iterations and kind of brought that, that cost down. And we've also, at one point, we included, Mr. Crawford's class, to kind of help with that design, and we fed that into, the to the architect, and he based the design, off of the feedback from the students. So it's a good interaction there. So we'll be coming back on the 17th, asking for permission to bid this project for this summer, hopefully.
All right, questions? Yeah, Gretchen?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to share that I attended the presentation of the sign ideas from the students in that class. And those students who were seniors then are now juniors at Penn State. Some of them that I know. So it's been a while, but I think it's just good to highlight to the community that how cool this is that his class did this, and from their work, some of their ideas, it sounds like, have been incorporated into, what will be. So just really cool example of a real life contribution from students to the school, that this will be permanent, even though they're going to go off and do other great things. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, so physical plant every year engages the class, and we pick a project to give them that we're actually going to do, and have them kind of work on it as well, and then feed that back into our engineering team. So it's a good experience for them. Moving on to Mount Nittany Elementary.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I'm just curious about the current design. I guess two things. Are the letters embedded? Are they floating? Like, how are they affixed to the wall? Do we have any concern about vandalism and the letters disappearing and having to be replaced over time? And I ask this because one of my kids goes to a university where the letters routinely disappear from their sign. It is not the local university. So I'm just asking.
So it's means and methods, and at this point, it's simply a rendering. But we'll take that back to the architect.
Okay.
That hasn't been worked out as far as
Okay.
attachment points, and yeah.
Right. So that's a concern of mine. And then just looking at this design, it looks like a nice flat top, which tends to encourage, well, not so much climbing. It doesn't look that high, but skateboards. So are we going to be worrying about people riding their skateboards on the top? Are we going to have to affix the little things that discourage the skateboards? And does that detract from the design? So anyway, we just have a rendering, and I don't know how specific we are, but I don't want to get into a really expensive upkeep of this if we can anticipate some of that ahead of time.
Sure. So this doesn't show a cap on top, so it would just be brick, which would serve the same purpose as the small pieces of metal they put on for concrete, because it won't be smooth. So I'm not a skateboarder, but I would think it would be pretty tough to take it across brick. Peter, you wanna?
We're looking at you.
You can wax that thing.
Okay.
But I mean, there's like, if there's grass space between it, it's gonna be, you can make it a challenge for a skateboarder. And that also looks, how high is that?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's not very high.
Like 2 feet?
I think it's a
3.5
little, it's
feet?
probably somewhere around between 3 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, that's also like kind of high, so that's also a challenge. They're gonna have to get a little ramp to
And
do
we-
it.
and don't we
It's gonna
also
be,
have-
it's gonna be a bit of a pain to do
We
it.
also have the fence. I don't know how close the fence, I don't see that, or is that not come down that far?
Make
The
it a
black,
challenge.
it doesn't come down that far.
That's
I
sort of
can't-
my
I'm having
point.
trouble
Let's
picturing
make it a challenge
Challenge.
as we're going through this. Keep that on our minds.
I will take this good feedback back to our team.
Are we anticipating putting a similar sign on the other side for the Delta Middle and High School?
I have not worked on that yet.
Okay. So maybe.
Has been requested.
I see. Yeah.
Trying to take one challenge at a time.
I have one more question.
All right.
So is this wide enough for students to sit on? Or how narrow is it going to be? Because you can't really tell from the rendering.
Sure. I mean, you'll be able to sit on it.
Cool.
The whole idea was for graduation pictures and things like that, that they could use that as a backdrop.
Focal point, yeah, great.
And as far as the size of the lettering, there's a standard based on speed limit and distance.
I'm sorry, if I could just follow up to what Aaron asked, like the town has rules about how much signage we can have. So I just want to make sure that if we are going to have a request for a sign across the street, that there's enough leftover surface area to create a second sign if we think we're going to go that route. And if not, then we need to be thinking ahead to that, so that we have a plan for both signs if we're going to have both. Am I making myself clear? Right? We don't want to use up all the space and then say, sorry, you can't have a sign because.
Especially since Delta High probably wants to take a picture with their sign as well. Right.
Yeah.
Luckily with this design, you only get the only piece of the square footage that counts is the actual letter. So if there's no actual background to it,
Okay.
it's just the square footage of the actual letters and not like a banner would be, it's 2x4, it's 8 square feet, right?
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. Any other last things? Okay, go ahead. We want to move on?
Okay, over to Mount Nittany Elementary. So we are full steam ahead at this point. The fencing is up, across the entire job site. I mean, I sent a letter out to, all the neighbors, let them know what's going on, and feel free to contact me if they have any issues. We've made a couple of small concessions to the neighbors down towards Louder Avenue, just like moving the fence a little bit here and there. They had some requests. We've met with, all of our internal stakeholders because there will be a little bit of a different traffic pattern for parents, and letters were sent out as well. We're basically taking one lane of the double lane, so it'll get bottlenecked a little bit. We feel as though that's the best option. So we've relocated. There were some sheds that are in the way. That's all moved, and we have those in there moving earth. We anticipate, I talked to the well driller this morning for the geothermal. We anticipate them starting here in about 2 to 3 weeks, which is perfect because then we will get that field seeded for fall, so we can get on it a couple of years. So questions, concerns?
Great.
Okay. Moving on to Park Forest. So this is really about the stormwater. Okay. So we put together a couple. Yep. So Todd Smith from ELA, I'll put this together so you can join us. So really right now we're looking at two options. One is to put the stormwater basin kind of out towards Valley Vista, which will require cutting down about 50% of those trees. It was about a 7-acre parcel there. Both options have a small basin kind of at the north end of that 7-acre plot along Valley Vista. And then the one option, obviously, you can see it's putting that stormwater basin kind of at the south end, a much larger basin. So, you know, somewhere around 40 to 50% of the trees would have to come down. And then our second option is going kind of under the road and then going over to where the current kind of visited softball fields are now at the current Park Forest Middle site. In doing so, we potentially have to put in some underground containment, which is shown there as well, kind of next to the new school, which adds to the cost. But we could also, it also gives us the opportunity to get the fields across the road kind of up to par that you could actually get on them. Right now, they're pretty wet and you can't get on them much throughout the year. We could actually kind of build those up. It would create stormwater basin, and you know what I would envision most likely would be probably a soccer field, a playable soccer field. So it's kind of like the two options we're looking at right now.
Just curious, especially looking at and thinking about option 2. Do we have a sense for how many of the trees will need to come down just for the sake of construction in the first place? Like, are some of the trees on that larger portion, or I guess I'm looking at option 1. Would some of those trees have to come down anyway just to get construction materials and equipment in?
Minimal.
Okay.
You said you're looking at both options. Oh,
No, go ahead.
so what will make you decide one versus the other? Like, what is your recommendation at this point?
My personal recommendations, I don't like to cut trees down unless we absolutely have to. So, but I think it's probably the board's decision. I think it's going to be a large community impact, you know, with this decision. So we really wanted to, you know, have it in front of you, so that you could help us with that.
So before Peter goes, so the two big cruxes of the problem, the cruxes would be our potential for tree loss versus the cost. So we're talking about 1.2 million roughly. We're thinking estimate, very back of the envelope,
budgetary,
estimate,
yes.
I'm assuming,
Right.
versus 2.4 possibly for that. But with that, we would get amelioration of fields that are already problematic. So that would be one addition. So I'm just clarifying that everybody's on the same page. That's what I'm reading. It sounds like you're saying.
We'd also get the soccer fields.
That's what I mean. The field, yeah, I said the fields would be remediated and yes, and it would be upgraded to a different type of field, a bigger.
Maybe it's not a soccer field. I would just, you know,
Yeah.
putting that out there, we couldn't put a softball infield
Yeah,
on it, for example. you
the
know.
demands for square fields is pretty high.
Right.
Peter?
So to add to that
Oh, yeah, sure.
quickly, so if we wanted to go with, let's say, option 1 and then remediate the two softball fields and turn them into, like, let's say, a soccer field, right, that you could play on it or any other field, the costs are probably getting pretty similar then.
I was going to get there eventually too. Peter?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for saying that wherever we can not cut down trees, we should not cut down trees. Appreciate that a lot. The Regional Climate Action and Adaptation Plan in its chapters on land management and in healthy water, both assert that we should be at the regional level doing what we can to preserve and extend forest. And so that includes, so preserving pieces of this tract would certainly be within the wishes of the adopted Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, which, just so that we're clear, that is not a policy that restricts us from doing anything. It is a plan that is aspirational. So preservation of woodland is good. So in the chapter on land management, this would be very much in keeping with its 5.2. And then in the healthy water chapter, preservation and extension of a tree canopy is also desirable. And I wonder in stormwater mitigation, if we were to be doing a new basin design on the other side of the road, am I hearing that or?
Correct.
Yeah, is how that could even be planted, and so that we could do some more deliberate carbon sequestering in addition to water. Would it be a retention, like a retention basin? Is it a 2 basin system, or would it just be like a big system like what's over at Haymarket?
So what we would envision is kind of like Welsh Field is actually a stormwater basin,
Okay.
but it's being able to use. Now, if we want to get into carbon sequestering, I don't think you could do both, but I'm not 100%.
Because you're talking about that stormwater basin being a soccer field.
Potentially, right. So there's a certain type of grass then we want to put in. I would assume sequestering would require something a little different, but maybe not. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, yeah, but recreation is a purpose, so like I'm not going to object to that. But certainly, if we can keep the trees, I would really prefer that we keep the trees.
And again, these are very preliminary at this point.
Todd, can you just clarify? So option
Yeah.
2 would, it allows for remediation of the soccer field in that cost estimate. Is that what you're saying? But option 1, we would still have additional cost.
Yeah.
Across, to remediate across the street, yes.
But 2 creates a field that but it's going to be in the basin.
Yes, we can develop the basin very much like Welch Field is.
Which is not always usable, depending on
The time of year.
time of year
how
and
much-
weather
and
conditions.
what it is.
I just want to make sure
No,
that everybody
absolutely.
understands.
But hopefully a little better than it is currently.
Understood, but still, it's not going to be a field that it would be
Full
useful.
use all the time, yeah.
Make sure that everybody understands.
Yeah, no, that's important. Debbie?
A couple things to say. Number one, all else equal, I'm all for not removing trees. But all else is not always equal, and the costs are very different. And so I do think that's a very relevant concern for our taxpayers. In addition, I guess I want to understand better option 2's impact on the current Park Forest Middle School students while that field is being remediated. It says maybe it could be done in the summer, but I'm just trying to understand, right? Like, if you're going to remediate that field, it's clearly not going to be usable to the kids. And this site stuff has to be done before we can build the new school. So are we going to have impacts on the current Park Forest students? And is that differential depending upon option 1 and option number 2? So impact on the students. And then number 2, if we have to go underneath the road, I'm wondering what is the impact on the road? Valley Vista is traveled every day by quite a lot of people. And the traffic when they were making the extra turning lane to go onto Circleville was unpleasant, but clearly better now. And so I just want to understand the impact on the community. How long of a period are we talking about? Is this going to impact the road? Are we talking about months and months of the traffic, all the way down to College Avenue?
So I'll speak on your first question and I'll let Todd speak on your second one. So impact to our kids, yes, there will be an impact. What we would shoot for is to get this work done over the summer when the kids aren't there to minimize it. But there will be a grow-in period, same as anything else. And we would come up with a plan to make sure that they still have some green space to get out for, phys ed, recess, that sort of thing. So we would have to, it's early to, we've thought about that and we're looking, okay, we could do it over the summer potentially. But there would still be some impact. So we would have to plan for that. And what that looks like exactly as far as the footprint and how much space we could still, have open and accessible. It's too early for that to
Okay. I just feel like that's going to be an important thing for us to know, because if the grow-in period is 2 years and that's the amount of time it takes us to build the new school, then for the entire time that these kids are left in that old building, we're also going to take away their playfield. That makes me feel a little bit differently about that option. So I want to understand that better before we have to make this decision.
Sure, and there's, I mean, in option two, you can see the basin doesn't go clear to the north, so there's still, there's still some space there. So it obviously we'd have to weigh the pros and cons of that.
Impact on the road,
For your
Valley
second-
Vista?
Yes, your second, the storm pipe, running it underneath the road will not take very long.
Okay.
But there are going to be other road impacts. We're improving Little Lion Drive. They'll have construction work at that intersection. And then at Amblewood Way,
right,
we are creating a four-way intersection there, which there will be work at that at that location. So scheduling will be the contractor's responsibility, and to minimize the amount of work time so that we minimize the impact to the community.
But the road improvements are going to happen regardless of what we choose for the stormwater abatement.
Correct.
That's not going to make a difference. I'm really just asking about, is there going to be a difference to the traffic and the road, choosing option 1 versus 2 for the stormwater, keeping it all on one side versus having it on spanning the 2 sides?
A storm pipe installation wouldn't take very
Pretty
long
quick.
at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Aaron, did you?
Gretchen.
Okay. Sorry, I was starting one side and then the other.
I just wanted to say quickly that those of us who remember the construction projects of the 3 elementary schools and especially State High, I think realize that temporary inconveniences are a part of construction and also a part of traffic flow interruptions, that we expect this is normal. And the other thing is that, going through those schools as they were being renovated, we saw the real effect on kids who are living in construction. And I was always amazed that under the worst circumstances, like some of these halls walking through State High were like dripping as we were walking through. And the students, I would always ask, and nobody complained about it because they were so happy and appreciative that they were getting a new building. So I think those are great questions. But just in terms of the reality and the experience of what we've lived through so far, this just sounds extremely minimal compared to what we've already gone through. And then I just wanted to also ditto what Peter said about if we can save trees, and what Mike said, let's save trees. Thanks.
Aaron?
Yeah. So just commenting on the tree part again, I just point out, we are building this school adjacent to a park, which the trees are a pretty important part of a park to begin with. If you've driven through Toff Trees before, I refer to it now as the neighborhood of Toff because we've lost quite a few trees there. I don't know that we want to do that in Park Forest. But the other question that I had, as we're considering the differences in cost for this portion, I'm just wondering if we have an update coming soon about the potential, like whether the range of costs for the entire project might have shifted as a result of changes in the upcoming price changes in materials like steel, or if it's too soon for us to ask Crabtree for more information.
Nope, and yes.
Terrific.
No, it's not too soon. And I answered them in the reverse order, but no, it's not too soon. And yes, we will have that, I would say, within the next month or so.
Thank you.
It's good to know. It's a concern on all our minds. Other questions on the stormwater abatement proposals? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All board members okay to keep plowing on?
About one more and then we'll take a break.
Okay, we can, yeah, I know. I want to get you into.
No, I need to fix the AV.
Oh, okay. Oh, right. And we have the solar group piece. Okay. Go ahead, Randy.
So I'll just kick this off. For those that don't remember, or for members of the community that aren't aware, the MOU ending the PPA and joining the ending the PPA working group, which allowed us to join the PPA, calls for a new organization called the Center County Solar Group, which will not be doing anything other than managing our energy uses and working with the consultant and as representing us with our solar developer and our energy distributor. And so you need to appoint 2 board members to serve on that group. And so that's the purpose of this memo. We'd like to have that as a future action item to appoint those individuals. And then the expectation would be that those 2 people would be future annual appointments in December whenever there's board reorganization.
Yeah, so we would add that to our list. So you can jump up and down now that you want to do that, or you can contact Debbie and I down the road.
Do we nominate people? I mean, is that?
Well, so so technically it would fall in the same realm as committee appointments, which formal and logistically the president has the purview to make that decision. But generally, the way we function is we usually try to ask for volunteers and who's best. I'm just saying that's the way it
No,
works.
no. I'm making.
And so, we would want people who are available, interested. I know, this would be an annual appointment. I would encourage it would be good to maybe have somebody who's able to maybe serve more than once, but of course that's always changes. We always have things that change annually. So that's it.
I've already missed a COG meeting. Do you really want me to miss that? I'm just kidding.
Wow.
So you guys can think of it on that and get back to Debbie and I, and then we'll put you on the next agenda. If I don't hear from 2 people, which occasionally happens, I will be tapping you on the shoulder. Jackie, did you want to add something?
I was just gonna say I'd be interested in serving now and or in the future.
Awesome.
Because it's something I care about and I would like to learn more about. And I feel like if I'm on the committee, I will do a better job to take the initiative and discuss that with people. So I would be willing. I'll just throw that out there.
Great. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, Gretchen.
I just wanted to say, so from now until going, indefinitely into the future, the 2 people that do this, it would be nice if there was an appreciation of intergovernmental collaboration, because there's a lot of that goes on with these roles. So, somebody who cares about that and being a good neighbor, to our municipalities. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I know we've had a long stretch, but I think our team needs to do a little AV prep. And so we're going to take a 5-minute recess and we'll reconvene and start our finance committee section.
I'm going over here. Just, there, we're good now. We're good. That's exactly what it's doing. It's all good.
All right, we got 9. All right, I'm going to reconvene the March 3rd, 2025 Committee of the Whole State College Area School District Board of Directors meeting. And we're going to move on with our Finance Committee updates.
So for the next several hours, we're going to talk about budget. I'm going to start off with the governor's budget proposal, which obviously there's a lot to take in there, as well as there's a lot of work to be done in Harrisburg before it becomes reality. I just want to point out that there are 51 slides that have been mentioned to me several times during the break. I am not going to hit every single one. The proposal is $133 billion. And again, there's just a lot of information here. 51.4 is the general fund budget. Were several recurring themes, and the first one that the only one I'll point out is investing in children, students, and educators, and that's the part that affects our line of business and what we do each and every day, creating opportunity for our children and students to succeed. Okay, just several pictorial slides that talk about the percentage of the budget and its composition. 75 million is proposed to increase the basic education formula, 40 million proposed increase to special education formula, and 526 to help fund new adequacy and tax equity investment. Education priorities. Excuse me, 100 million for physical and mental health targeted grants, 125 for school facilities, 17 million for pre-K counts, 14.5 for early intervention. Lots of other education appropriations that are included here. Again, not going to spend a lot of time on these because there's a lot that has to happen. I am going to talk about what's not in the proposed budget, and that is cyber charter reimbursement, past scholarships, PlanCon funding, minimum teacher salary, and EITC OSTC increases. Additional proposed
And
revenue.
some of those are good things and bad things that they're not in
Correct.
there. I just wanted to clarify for
Absolutely.
the community. Not all of those things are, yeah,
Right.
positive.
Either
They're
one of
both
those.
positives or negative.
Correct. Additional proposed revenue, video gaming, adult use marijuana, corporate net income tax reduction, and increase in the minimum wage. So again, there's lots of information here about the basic education funding. Pictorially, I want to show, sorry, for some reason, I got a delay here. The column, the vertical lines are showing the basic education funding, and then the student weighted BEF to show how that has increased, and it would increase in this proposed budget. Just want to keep going here. Special education funding, there's lots of different components to that as well. For some reason, my computer is being really slow at responding here. Again, the special education components over time, there is some increases there, has been and continues to be proposed increases. Okay, this slide, I want to talk about special education funding as in relationship to costs at the district level, individually, and then collectively, excuse me, as well as our district as well. So there are categories of special education students, 1, 2, and 3. And that's dependent on the amount of need and the cost to educate those students. And again, those costs have been rising. That's the purpose of this slide. This next slide, it shows our expenses by category for State College Area School District. The reason that there is a dramatic change in 21-22 between categories 1 and 2 is because they went from 4 categories of funding of cost definition to 5. But you can see our number of students have increased, as well as the costs associated to educating those students. This next slide is 100% of shows the percentage of each category as a whole of those costs. Again, this is special education teachers and students at SCASD. The number of teachers have been fairly level, but the number of students have been increasing. And what I will note is that if you compare this number of teachers with what was presented earlier, I'm talking about what is called special education classroom teachers. There's lots of interventionists, hearing, vision. Those teachers, they were in the other report. They're not in the numbers that I'm presenting here. Wanted to make that clarification for you. This is the subsidy revenue versus the instructional expenses. So the taller lines are obviously, and this is statewide, the amount of expenses for 25-26 are expected to be $6.4 billion. Whereas the instructional expenses are expected to be $6.4 billion. And then the subsidy revenue, whether it's state, federal IDEA, is not keeping up in any way, any direct proportion.
That's a big understatement.
Yes, that would be correct.
I'll say that part for you. That's a big difference.
Right. Again, just another comparison of the expenses to the federal, to the revenue. Again, here is again, expenses to revenue, and that was SCASD. And then this is cost per student by funding category, and this is SCASD as well. Some ready to learn information, cyber charter school reform, which we would love any kind of reform in that world. And then just talking about some safety and security, school construction, educator recruitment, food service, career and technical, and then formula-driven appropriations, PSER, Social Security, people transportation, and non-pub charter transportation. PSERS, there's language about PSERS. PSERS percentage of cost to the district as an employer rate is going to be about the same as it was this year, 34%. An increase to PSERS funding. Property tax relief. We expect to have $1 billion in property tax relief, and then that will help to offset local tax bills, real estate tax bills. There are considerations, and this is all at the state level. So there's a lot of uncertainty with federal revenue, and that comes into a lot of conversations each and every day. Where that's going to land, we don't know. But if we look at all of our federal revenue as a district, in our general fund, we receive about $2.8 million. And in food service would be about $1.4 million. So if some of the discussions that have been happening out of Washington about ending or reducing federal revenue to our district, it would be about almost $4.2 million impact. Okay, 4.3. And then again, just there's lots of legislative review and appropriations hearings that need to occur, some of which have already occurred, and there'll continue to be more. So I don't think that was 4 seconds per slide, Peter. I think I did better.
I mean, but you did all right, man.
But I'm happy to answer any question, take any questions. I'll try to answer any that I can. And if I can't, I can try to get some answers for you if you have any questions.
No, I think you had a good summary slide in there about, no plan con money, no. Some of the things we'd like to see return haven't come back, but yeah.
I just want to mention that they did, there was an allowance to, or in his proposal, the governor has increased the amount of funding given to student teacher
The grants, like they're
grants,
yeah.
or I'm not sure what the
The term they're
subsidies
using.
or like
Mhm.
stipends,
Yeah,
maybe?
stipend.
Stipends. So that program was so successful last year and so sought after that they have proposed an increase to that.
Okay.
So I'll just
That's a good.
throw
I'll
that out
just,
there.
as typical, that program in the spring semester this year isn't causing me the PTSD that it did in the fall semester because of the lack of instructions and the changing instructions.
From the state, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, Carlene?
yeah, I know you won't be able to answer that, but every time I hear about special education, because I recently went to Washington and that's basically what they were talking about, and that makes me very nervous. And with the 4.3 billion dollars that we're going to be losing, are there any kind of provision of what that may look like? I mean, have we thought about some of the consequences? Because I know sometimes that keeps me up at night.
You mean if we would lose the
Yes.
$4.3 million? CJ, do you want to talk about that?
So a lot of that is being held up through litigation. There's a lot to be worked out. There's a reporting process, as we all know. What would come out of that reporting process is a long time waiting. They are using OCR to investigate those complaints. And as we have determined just with other OCR complaints, it takes an extreme long time to address them, especially the numbers that would be coming in to look into the various different individual complaints from all across Pennsylvania.
And the federal government is making cuts in those departments, which with decreased staffing would probably prolong those evaluations. Just an observation to add.
And a lot of the orders fly in the face of law. The Civil Rights Act, things of that nature. So there's a lot of things that have to be ironed out in litigations in the court before anything happens to individual school districts as far as withdrawing federal funds.
Yeah, to the same extent, IDEA is a law passed by Congress and funded by Congress, and their role in our 3 branches of government is to hold the purse and do those things. So I think there will be a lot of people insisting that that money be delivered to those students because it's about delivering it to those students. Jackie, did you have something that?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that this is federal law requires that we provide these services to students. It is not optional.
Correct.
And so if they cut the funding to special ed, it would become an unfunded mandate, even though it's pretty close to being an unfunded mandate at this point in terms of the amount the federal government puts into it. And I just want to also point out that the increase in spending for special education from the state is a pittance. It is not, in terms of percentages, it is not much at all. It will not.
And it was a
cover.
pittance last year.
Correct. So.
And that's concerning. These are some of our highest need students. They're their highest cost to educate in some cases, not all of them, but the lack of higher governmental support for these students is appalling. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, I just to pile on to the obvious. Today, Linda McMahon was approved to be the Secretary of Education. And during her confirmation hearing, she distanced herself from President Trump's incendiary rhetoric about simply shutting down the Department of Education. Now, what that actually means in practice is, of course, yet to be seen. She did say that she would preserve Title I money for low-income schools, Pell Grants for low-income college students, and the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, but that some operations, like disability rights enforcement, should be moved perhaps to Health and Human Services. I just want to pile on to what Dr. Bader just said, which is that the gutting of the federal government by DOGE will make it that much harder to do. And I want to say to my fellow board members, members of the public, that I find this completely and totally unacceptable and consider it an assault on children. That's all.
All right. So shall we move on to our own budget? Is that the plan? And how we're going to meet the needs of our students because we take good care of them as best we can.
100%.
Well, thank you for this. To begin the budget, the first thing you do is you assess where you are in the current year, how it's going. So that's what this first portion of the presentation will be. And as you can see with the changes since the original budget, which was shown, there's increased projected interest income. We have shown an increased state aid with the basic education formula or in the basic education funding that came out in September, and some more information in the governor's address. Other key changes include the activity that we realized in 24-25. Real estate transfer tax has been higher than estimated. Based upon the health insurance trending at the levels budgeted this year versus last year, there's really going to be, we eliminated the contingency in the utilization of committed fund balance. A transfer to capital reserve has been contemplated based upon the increase in state aid, and budget amendments totaling $836,000 to date are included in the 24-25 projections. So going forward, you can now see where the fund balance roll forward is. Will let us know where it's going in the fund balance in the future. And as you can see, the cliff that's been there for a few years does still remain. Moving on to the next slide, which shows
Joe,
revenues.
I think we're not getting the scroll of your slides, unfortunately. So I don't.
It's me.
Oh, okay.
It's my technical difficulty.
No worries. I saw a couple board members look confused, and so I wanted to just try to get us all on the same page again.
And I apologize.
Oh, no, it's okay. You were concentrating on your part.
So on page 4 of the presentation, it's general fund revenue, and it assumes a real estate tax increase of 4%. The areas highlighted in yellow is newish information since the original budget came on out. On slide 5 is the general fund expenditures. And again, the yellow highlights do the changes, and the largest changes are showing with the salaries and health insurance from 24-25 or going forward in the updated, sorry, it's not salaries, it's pension, and the updates that occurred with that. Got a very small screen here.
You have a bigger screen than they do.
I know. Slide 6 is a capital reserve fund in the utilization of those funds. The big utilization, which is contemplated, will be portions of the project being utilized for both the Park Forest Middle School and Mount Nittany Elementary School.
If you had a Mac, maybe it would work.
There you go.
Doing great. PCs.
So that's slide 6 with the capital reserve fund in the roll forward there. Items accomplished since the last budget include we've received the budget head draft budgets back and have begun assessing personnel costs for the 25-26 budget. Again, reviewing the information through December 31st, 2024 to make sure the numbers are going consistently with where we want to with this budget and to see any variances with next year's proposed budgets coming on in. We have monitored again the PA state budget and begun to assess new additions to 25-26 budget, which include personnel requests and new non-personnel costs, such as potential debt service for Mount Nittany Elementary School addition. So the next steps are finalizing detailed budget, continuing personnel budgeting, and then continuously updating the financial information to make sure the 24-25 continues to trend as expected. So my following slides, we've talked about a good bit, are cyber charter schools. This is the Auditor General's recommendations coming out on slides 9 and 10 as it pertains to cyber charter schools. And then the key documents still to come. There's a comparison of revenue by source. As you can see, 23, 24, 24, 25, the main increase is the 2.65% real estate tax increase and improved federal funding or state funding, not federal funding. In the comparison of expenditures by source, you can see where we were in 23, 24 versus 24, 25. It does bear noting that personnel costs are trending up, as we've mentioned in previous presentations. Actual personnel costs in 22-23 were 69% of the budget, and they are anticipated to be a little over 72% of the budget in fiscal year 25. So then revenue and expenditure by function, as you can see, we're 80% funded locally and about 20% funded on the state level with a sliver from the federal government. And then the expenditures by function, 56% is straight instructional, 31% is support services. And support services includes the transportation, physical plant, central offices, and that sort of thing. And then this is a budget matrix spreadsheet, which will merge the line items with the organization or the function code, which will give you the information as shown above in the charts. And from there, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay, board members? Peter?
Yeah, this is not so much a question as it is a comment to follow up on the slide from the Auditor General. He is the third Auditor General to make a finding like this. So this problem, which our board understands very well and has talked with our own legislators about consistently in trying to get reform to cyber charter funding, Tim DeFore is the third one to do this. And I think that can't be overstated. And I want to read something from his release. He said, in this audit, we found these cyber charter schools legally increased their revenue from $473 million in the 2019-2020 fiscal year to $898 million in the 2022-23 fiscal year. We found instances of the cyber charter schools legally using taxpayer dollars on things like staff bonuses, gift cards, vehicle payments, and fuel stipends. Additionally, Commonwealth Charter Academy spent $196 million to purchase and/or renovate 21 buildings, which to us seems a bit out of the ordinary for a public school that is based on online instruction.
Yep.
I think that this is a travesty. And I would really like it if our representatives in Harrisburg for this school district, Representatives Conklin and Representative Takak, would do something about it because they are our voice in Harrisburg. And it would be good if they would go to bat for this school district and the other school districts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The governor can say whatever he wants. The governor is not the legislature. This is a reform to the law in Pennsylvania, and it needs to be done now. I'm a little feisty today because I'm sick and tired of people who are supposed to represent us sitting on their hands and not taking action when the people of this school district ask them to do it. So please Do it. Thank you.
I also just want to rephrase what Peter just said a little bit to note that 800 whatever million, 898 million, that's all taxpayer money that the cyber charters are sitting on. And so that is money that has been paid by taxpayers of Pennsylvania. And the money that they have spent can be on things like, beyond what you mentioned, advertisement. And there's been I got some information today that showed that one cyber charter academy has spent over $500 per pupil in advertising in a single fiscal year. So,
And can I cap off with the fact that multiple studies have shown that Pennsylvania's cyber schools are among the worst in the country's cyber schools? They have some of the poorest results for their students. Sorry, but add your other pieces.
No, I'm done. I think that's good.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you were at the end of the numbers. Yeah.
Go ahead. Thank you for the presentation on our budget. I did want to ask a couple questions about our budget. Not that I disagree with the charter school stuff, but it's been said already, so I don't need to repeat it. Just going back to slide 2 really quickly. Under increased state aid, I just want to ask, because I feel like this might be a slight change from past practice. You said that you've increased the 25, 26 and beyond projected budgets to reflect the governor's proposed budget. And I feel like in the past, we only usually reflect changes once the budget is passed.
So last year with the budget passage, there was about $700,000 of state funds, which were determined to be, what's the word I'm looking for? They weren't guaranteed, but with the new funding formula coming out, it said to basically guarantee those funds. So we basically had, if you look at the 24-25 budget
Right.
versus 25-26, originally it went down by about $700,000. Now we've said we're going to keep it flat to say that funding that came in is not going to be one-time funding. This is going to carry forward within the basic education formula.
Okay, so it's not so much reflecting the
An increase.
proposed new monies for the future. It's just reflecting the fact that past increases we expect to be carried forward.
Correct.
Okay, that's really helpful. I did not get that out of that slide, so that's great. I just wanted to point out for the community's point of view, how difficult it is to project budgets out 10 years. If you just look at slide 3, and the numbers that are highlighted in yellow are flip-flopping expected either funding or use of the healthcare insurance fund. We are self-funded. If we have a bad year, we're going to have to use a lot of money from that contingency fund. If we have a good year, we might be able to make deposits in. And so there's wide variation there, and that's really hard to predict. So that creates some pretty wide variation in our out-year budgets. So I think that's important.
If I could add one
Yeah,
comment too,
absolutely.
related to that, our goal has always been shared by our actuarial consultants that we should have between 3 and 6
Right.
months of expenses in that fund. We've been very fortunate to carry 6 months. However, in a bad year, we could take that down below that 6-month level. And again, that would potentially change some of those multi-year budgets. So
Yeah.
again, these are our best estimates, trying to stand firm to some of our principles and our budgeting strategies that may not be able to be held true depending on what the future holds.
Exactly. And then my last point that I wanted to make, again, it's not exactly a question, but just looking at slide 3, it clearly projects that our unassigned fund balance will go negative. Fortunately, that's been pushing out. And so we hope that that continues to be the case, but we don't know that for sure. But what the projections suggest is that our expected costs are going to outweigh our expected revenues unless something changes. And related to that, if you look at slide 6 and the capital reserve fund, in order to maintain a healthy fund to do things like Park Forest Middle School et cetera. We need to try to make contributions to the capital reserve fund. And slide 6 suggests that we would like to try to do that in the future, but we can't depend on making those deposits if our expected expenditures continue to outweigh our expected revenues. So something is going to have to change in the budgeting in the out years. So we're going to have to make some decisions.
Correct.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm just gonna add on to that too, that like it also depends on what the state does, right? Because like if
Absolutely.
they continue, not continue, depending on how much they increase the basic education funding by, will have a lot of impact, because in years past, it's like, oh, we get this extra little bit of money that we can put into capital reserves. And so
Exactly.
if that ends up getting eaten up by like an increase in expenditures versus our revenue, there could be a shift happening depending on what the state does too.
Yeah, a lot of unknowns that are unsettling. Yeah,
I
Eric.
would also like to point out, if we look at page 4, the general fund revenue assumes a real estate tax increase of 4%. And I would just like to point out to the public, at least, if it's not painfully clear, instability at the federal and sometimes at the state level has consequences at the local level. And one of those consequences is, as to Deb's point, we have to find revenue somewhere to pay for the things that cost money, especially the things that we're mandated to do. So I'm glad to see that it is assumed that we will reach that Act 1 index, because I will be very clear that is what I would prefer to see this year and going forward until we have that stability.
Yeah, it hits districts different ways. Us, with our district being 80% locally funded, there's a pretty big impact. That doesn't mean it doesn't greatly impact other districts. Certainly, if they are largely funded by state and federal dollars, any decreases there hurts them as well. And so it's, well, frankly, it's a process where students are not put at the center. So. All right, I think we've all pontificated enough. What else would you like to share with us?
So next, we'd like to have program areas be represented tonight. We'll start with athletics, and then we'll move on to, so if they would come up and get prepared. Then we'll have Megan from food service, and then Shannon from community education. These are kind of like annual reports, somewhat similar to what special education provided earlier, but from a programmatic and financial lens. And we, I would just want to kick off saying that these 3 programs all have different kinds of revenue sources. Athletics has probably the smallest amount of revenue that they generate, coming from ticket sales for some of their events. Then there is food service, which has a large amount of subsidy that we talked about that could be in jeopardy depending. And then community education is largely a tuition-based program. And so the latter 2 we expect to be self-funded or largely self-funded. Athletics obviously gets the largest impact from the district budget of these 3. So thank you, Chris and Lauren, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, really appreciate it. Hopefully we bring you all joy here this evening with this. Especially you, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you.
And everybody, really. But we're going to highlight a couple of things: the mission and goals, our budget review and process, some Title IX information, then the higher level overview of our athletic department. If we look at the next page, the mission statement, we always have an eye on the school district's mission statement of caring, responsive education, caring, responsive coaching, and support for our kids. We never lose sight of that in what we do. And to that end, if you look at the next page, our goal in alignment with the school climate and culture, I want to highlight 2 things that we are very excited about. The professional development of our coaches, as well as our student athletes with the Positive Coaching Alliance. We began that, and we're partnering up with them and showing great benefits of merging what we're sharing with our coaches, and professional development with our coaches, as well as professional development with our athletes. We're also streamlining our communication, again, in support and alignment with the district with the Parent Square platform. We started this last year, and we're continuing that. And I think that consistency has been very positive for us as well. Getting to the budget, you can see the next page. There's several years of history with the budget. And our budget request this year is a little over $2 million, $2,093,855, which really represents a 1% increase of just $21,297. To highlight a couple things within that, obviously our salaries and benefits drive a lot of our budget. The officials' rates, athletic training fees, technology fees, those are all constants that we must always adhere to. We also have enjoyed and celebrated some additions to our programming. Second year for ninth grade girls volleyball, second year for expanding our girls wrestling program, and also investigating and pursuing possible girls flag football. So we're continuing to add and support our kids and our community the best we can. And also considerations for club sports coaching salaries.
Thank you, Mr. Weekland, and good evening, everyone. Continuing with the budget topics, obviously our North Star is always to deliver a rich, high-level, fulfilling experience for any and all students. To do that, though, we want to remain efficient, streamlined, and fiscally responsible with our budget. And to that end, there are four main areas I want to touch on before moving to the next slide. Mr. Brown mentioned that one of our areas of revenue and one of the primary areas of revenue is through advertisement and sponsorships. I think many of you, if not all of you, have seen the document that logs the sponsorships we've brought in over the years. In addition to that, though, I do want to mention that there's been an earnest effort, I think, to boost revenue and drive revenue through ticket sales, whether it's for football, girls volleyball, boys and girls basketball. The nice byproduct of that is that if we're driving revenue through ticket sales, we're bringing more people from our community out to see the work of our student athletes on a regular basis. In addition, we're trying to continue to collaborate with our booster clubs in order to provide needs that might fall beyond the budget. Obviously, the landscape of high school athletics changes from year to year. There may be things that our students or coaches need that may be different from the year prior. And in some cases, that may fall outside the budget. And we are fortunate to have great booster clubs, active booster clubs with whom we can work to try to find resources and secure those items. We continue to try to be transparent with our budgeting process, when possible, proactive, in order to be effective and efficient in purchasing equipment for our teams, and continue to offer and support a wide variety of club and intramural opportunities. Obviously, as the desire for greater engagement grows, so too will the resources that are needed to support those students in all areas. On the next slide, we have a few areas in particular and impacts on the budget that I think we want to touch on. The first three, inventory of equipment and supplies. Obviously, we are incredibly grateful for the storage area and the physical plant building that we were given. Very helpful. We try to be as efficient as possible in evaluating the uniform rotation system for teams so that we are equitable in that process, but we're ordering them in a timely manner. In doing so, that's, again, fiscally responsible. And then also identifying some of the competition equipment we need, such as goals, mats, nets. There is the standard wear and tear. And again, with the increased desire for engagement, we'll have more students interacting with that equipment. Their lifespans may be shorter. So we're trying to be efficient as far as identifying when to order, reorder, and repurpose those items. We work closely with Van Swagger and the transportation department to try to identify the most efficient routes possible and the most efficient ways we can transport our student athletes. Obviously, we're in a unique situation. In the high school level, we travel quite a distance to go find most of our competition. So when possible, if we can combine teams on buses, if we can find ways to play 3 teams in one day, that is advantageous for us in a number of different ways. And at the bottom of that slide, some of the other impacts on the budget obviously are the new and emergent sports opportunities. If we were to add girls flag football, obviously that would have an impact on the budget. Another example is the impact from the community. If we are to absorb a fairly large number of young student athletes this fall, potentially, with SC Lions delivering 50+ student athletes to us, which is a great thing, but that will have an impact on the budget as well. The next slide shows a snapshot of some of the revenue and expense from the last 3 fiscal years. I do want to point out, and this speaks to some of the work we've tried to do with ticket sales, that we are up 18% as far as ticket revenue for us since 2022. Some of the drivers in particular with that category, we've seen a 21% growth in girls volleyball revenue, a 55% increase in revenue for season tickets. And again, that's a pass not just to one particular sport, but to any ticketed event. And then a 63% increase in our football revenue over the last 3 years. Moving on to the next slide, it looks at the 3 prongs of Title IX. I think most of you are pretty familiar with this, the 3 prongs being proportionality, history, and continuing practice of program expansion, and full and effective accommodation of interests and abilities. The next slide touches on a few of those items and how we're trying to make sure we're compliant with those prongs. As it relates to history and continuing practice of program expansion, Mr. Weekland touched on some of the recent expansions, in particular 9th grade girls volleyball, girls wrestling at both the middle school and high school levels, and the reestablishment of our high school unified bocce program over the last 2 years, and our possible future expansion, including girls flag football at some level, whether it's club, intramural, or PIAA. And on the full and effective accommodation of interests and abilities prong, I spoke to you a couple of weeks ago about our survey of 7th through 12th grade female student athletes or students in the school district. And again, we did identify sufficient interest for flag football. As I shared with you a few weeks ago, we are looking forward to rolling that out, albeit slowly, to make sure we do it the right way and to make sure we give them a good experience from the outset. As far as remaining in proportion, you are all familiar with the Act 82 and Title IX reports that are published on our website and readily available at any time. Mr. Weekland?
Looking at the whole picture of our athletic department, I think this chart really speaks volumes of how many kids we impact and what we do. As you look at the 3 sports seasons, we have 74 different sports schedules that we support, where we need to provide officials and contest game managers and so on and so forth with that. To that end, just for clarity, for example, if you have middle school basketball, we obviously have Park Forest, Mount Nittany, but we also have boys and girls at each one. So they count as 8 different schedules because of the different schools and different genders and then the levels within the program. As we look at the next slide again, comparing ourselves to local as well as comparable districts, we're right there with most of the districts that we compare ourselves to. We're a little bit above some, a little bit below others, but I feel we do offer our student athletes and our students great opportunity. Looking at the PIAA sports numbers on the very next page, just looking at by grade, just want to make sure you note that these also count multiple sport athletes. So if you have a student athlete who is a 2-sport student athlete, they're going to be counted twice in that season. So it's not exclusive. However, not included in this meeting, in this chart, is team managers or team photographers, media teams, student athletic trainers that are involved with our programs to go above and beyond the actual participation numbers. The next 2 slides talk a little bit about the cost per participant. Obviously, salaries, transportation, specialized equipment and needs are all obviously driven within those 2 charts, both boys and girls at the high school and boys and girls at the middle school level. And beyond our PIAA sports teams, we do offer some great intramural programs that Mr. Chris will talk about.
Yep, I am pleased to talk about our intramural program, which continues to grow and frankly is full of SCASD employees who do some wonderful work with students at all grade levels. I won't go through all the numbers here on the intramural sports offered slide, but our elementary intramural numbers continue to grow. And I will touch on the newest initiative in that list, which was Girls on the Run from this past fall. We piloted the program in spring of 2024. In the fall of 2024, it took on a more formal position within the district, and it culminated in a fantastic event. I don't know if maybe some of you saw it. Yep, there you go, Mr. Miller. Yeah, it was a great event, great program. And I think it bodes well for what is to come for Girls on the Run in the district. There is another spring offering. Not all 5 schools will participate this spring, but there are some repeat schools, and I think that is a program that is poised to grow very quickly here in the district. The middle school IM offerings, again, bowling and skiing, as always, are the most popular. At the high school, Again, the IM bowling program is run by Melissa Kaufman, who does a fantastic job. Our IM skiing program continues to stay steady, and IM basketball has had a full season under its belt and will finish up tomorrow night with its championship with almost 300 students participating as well. Our club sport offerings are on the following page. We have 2 club sports teams, high school ice hockey with 25 participants, rugby, both boys and girls, and a middle school club ice hockey team as well with 20 participants at that grade level. We should mention that in addition to our athletic teams and clubs and organizations, we do support the 63 recognized clubs within the district and the high school level. We support them by trying to find spaces for them, find advisors, assist in budget management, assist in event planning for them, and are pleased to do so because it allows us to interact with some great and talented youngsters. The final page is just a snapshot as far as what is needed to host an event. And just a glimpse at what goes into planning the event as far as personnel, some of the impacts on the budget. We'll just go quickly through the bullet points. The means of communication, PA announcers, many of whom are SCASD employees. The emergency action plans, severe weather shelter areas. We work extremely closely with our athletic trainers and the State College Police to make sure those are communicated, to make sure people are aware, are informed, and can act on that at a moment's notice. We work very closely with our physical plant for the parking and spectator access and plans for our visiting teams when they visit campus and facilities. The basic game needs are listed there. And again, I will emphasize that many of those positions that you read on that slide are filled by SCASD teachers and other employees who do a magnificent job working late into their weeknights, late on their weekends, and they really do a nice job coming together to help us pull off our events.
That's all we have for you. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Thanks very much. Board members, questions?
I'd just like to add one last thing, that Girls on the Run and skiing, IM skiing received some significant funding from the foundation this year to help make some of those opportunities possible.
Thanks. That's good to know. That's good to know. I did have one little question. Looking back on the cost per participant, I was a little perplexed at the difference between girls basketball and boys basketball at the high school. So it looks like there's, if I'm understanding the chart right, there's fewer girl participants than boy participants, but the cost per participant is well over 1,000 more per participant. And I just was, is it because we have a lot of teams that are smaller and so we have more events, or like?
So both teams carry
Am I
the same.
understanding right?
Well, I think it's a good question. Both teams carry the same salaries for the coaches. They have roughly the same schedules for the competition. So those play a big role in it, and the numbers are quite different with that. Participant numbers. So that really jumps that average cost per participant up for girls basketball compared to boys basketball. So I think those are two of the driving forces that the salaries we pay for both coaching staffs are the same. Transportations are all the same. They're very similar. Yes.
No, I know that. I think what I'm asking is, and what I think is probably the answer is the density on some teams are more than others, because we would have similar numbers of coaches, but there's like maybe just enough girls to field the team, whereas the boys team has maybe a bigger bench, so to speak. And so that brings down the cost. To your point, you're talking about why it goes up. I guess my brain is thinking about, why it comes down. So that makes sense. Thanks.
yes.
I just wanted to better understand if that was the reason why.
Yes. Thank you.
But yeah, Debbie?
I guess just to follow up on that, though, my understanding is so the extra duty, extra pay, I guess that's not exactly the coaching salaries, but when we talk about extra duty, extra pay, some of the difference in what advisors get depends upon how many students are participating in the sports. And so I do wonder if it's fair to have the same coaching salary for two individuals. One individual is managing twice as many athletes as the other. Does that really warrant the same coaching salary and the exact same number of assistant coaches? So I think it's
the ranges for employee for number of points based upon number of participants in many of these cases, the point value and therefore the amount that a coach for the girls basketball team, even though they have 17 participants and the boys have 28, are going to be the same. So it's double or almost double, but it's still within those different ranges. Does that make sense?
It makes some sense, but I guess I do have some sympathy for the coach that's getting not paid more to have to manage twice as many athletes. So I'm just pointing it out that there's different ways of looking at equity.
Correct.
And that might be one way that
May be
makes
something
you
that we look
question
at
that.
in the future.
Yeah, because the difference in the wrestling coaches is a lot bigger than the wrestling cost per athlete is bigger even than the basketball cost per athlete because we have so many fewer female wrestlers. But I also understand that that's a growing sport and we need to invest in it in order to increase the participation. So I'm not necessarily saying we should make changes. I'm just pointing it out.
Doesn't hurt to always just to review those formulas.
Yeah.
I just had a.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't know.
Aaron can go now.
Okay.
I just had a question about a couple sports at the middle school level. I noticed, at least in 23, 24, it looked like there was girls volleyball and softball fast pitch, but boys did not have baseball or volleyball. Is that just due to interest or?
No, I don't think it's due to interest. It is, we haven't offered those programs.
Okay. Is there a reason or?
I think there, as we look at emerging sports, I think that's something we'd have to evaluate. What is the interest of our student bodies and our families as it pertains? And then how does it balance our Title IX numbers, to be honest with you as well? And just make sure that we have the facilities, the infrastructure. For example, softball, it's one standard field. For middle school baseball, it's a completely different field from Little League to the varsity. So it would require construction of a whole new field or renting another facility somewhere else.
Okay.
So there's some
What about
challenges with that, but it's not outreaching.
What about volleyball though?
Go ahead. Volleyball is a spring sport for boys at the high school. We do not have a middle school volleyball program. However, PWA, but we have offered intramural volleyball at the middle school level.
So part of it is PIAA doesn't offer competition at the middle level for boys volleyball and
I think
or historically maybe hasn't.
Right, correct. It would be a little bit more challenging finding competition.
Okay.
Girls volleyball is much more established
Okay.
at both
All
middle
right.
school and high school level than boys volleyball.
Okay.
Without a
makes
doubt.
Yeah, that makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
Peter?
Yeah, I just wanted to, on the second to last slide, what is needed to host an interscholastic event. I just really wanted to thank you for.
Can you get close to your mic?
Oh yeah, sorry. I just wanted to thank you for recognizing the whole suite of people that are in our school. Like so you brought up teachers and the number of people who are sort of outside of the school per se to make that happen, include safety people, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess it doesn't surprise me that the people who work with teams all the time want to recognize the team. But I just really appreciate that our community also really comes together around our athletics to support young people to do it. So just thank you again.
No, thank you for recognizing that. It really does take a team, and we're very, very fortunate.
Yeah. And
I would just add, I'm sorry, Dr. Baird. I would just add, it's not a stretch to say these events would not happen without them. It's that simple. There are people in this room that work our ticket booth and work as game managers, and it just simply wouldn't happen without them. So they are invaluable. We are very, very fortunate.
Yeah, I just wanted, coming from the policy committee, I wanted to appreciate that you mentioned emergency action plan, because I know we went through a newer policy about AEDs and all those things. And I know some feedback was taken to you guys just to check some boxes and make sure that things were available. I know in the region, unfortunately, there was an incident towards Altoona with a player who was very fortunate to receive immediate treatment and a good outcome. So I appreciate that you look to all those things as equally important. Other concerns, questions?
I just want to take this opportunity to bring attention to the workload of these two individuals and by the increasing of the sports teams that we have, especially females, and clubs and extracurricular activities, club sports, the issues that we have had with the various different costs and accountability and all those type of things. When we bring forth a new position to help to assist to assist them in their workload, especially dealing with extracurricular clubs, IMs, and club sports. Okay, so I just want to bring that to your attention when we start talking about the personnel that we need for next school year.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks for your patience. I know it's late, you're late on the agenda tonight. And the same goes for coming presenters. We appreciate your patience, and it's been a long wait. Welcome.
There we go. So thank you for your patience. I really appreciate your time and being able to come here tonight and tell you a little bit about what's going on with the food service department. The food service department budget is doing well. We ended last year with a healthy fund balance, or a healthy surplus at the end of the year. I'm projecting another surplus again this year. As you would have seen in my report, a lot of that has to do with state and federal funding, with the free breakfast for all that the state's subsidizing and some extra funding that the federal government has put forward over the last couple of years. The program's doing very, very well. Of course, we expect the federal government funding is going to go away, but we are glad to see at the state level, the state is going to continue the free breakfast, and that's very helpful. Oh, sorry, that's very helpful to us. So again, from a budget perspective, the program is doing very, very well. Okay. In your packet, I did include a memo asking for a slight lunch price increase for next year. So I just wanted to point that out to you and hope that you'll be approving that at your next board meeting. I took a little bit of a different perspective with the slides that I provided tonight because you did get my report and you got all the information in there. So I just gave you a couple slides to share a little more of the operational breadth of the kind of things that the food service department is doing. So on the next slide, just a couple pictures. In the upper right-hand corner is the concession stand that we handle at Memorial Field. This is the 4th year that we've done that. And it's a really nice collaboration with the football boosters. So it's a nice program for us. We certainly make a little money on it to help the food service program, which helps us operate a better program for students. And it helps the boosters have some funds to support the football team. So a really nice collaborative project. In the bottom right-hand corner, I just want to point out our Silverware Savers program. This is something we started 3 years ago. Not that the silverware is a huge expense, but it is very, very frustrating to my staff that like every couple of weeks they're ordering more silverware and it seems to be getting thrown away at the level of disposable silverware. So my staff was constantly asking me, can't we just use disposable? I do not want to use disposable. So we came up with this idea at the elementary level. We started it as a contest between the buildings and whoever lost the least silverware got ice cream treats. And now we are doing it that every school that loses less than 1/3 of a piece of silverware per student based on enrollment gets treats. And we do like 3 times per year. So very happy to report that all of the elementary schools met that goal through the end of February. Yes. So they were all getting ice cream at the end of March. So this has been, again, it's not a big money thing, but it's really nice to help teach kids about the importance of being thoughtful about that. And every school, they've built little ways to drop their silverware in. They've made little eagles with the eagle's beak open that you can drop your silverware through. Ferguson Township wrote a silverware song that they sing at their Christmas sing. So it's kind of nice. I have a picture of our birthday baskets there. Again, it's not a big thing that we do, but it's something that teachers and parents really do seem to appreciate, that it's a really easy way to have a birthday treat delivered to your child in the classroom. We can monitor it for allergies and it just works really, really well. And then pictures of National School Lunch Week. It was a pirate theme this fall. My staff had a great time going out with kids and celebrating National School Lunch Week. It is National School Breakfast Week this week, so we're doing some things in the schools with that. On the next slide, we had a very, very robust farm to school program before all of the construction and all of the pandemic mess. And we kind of had to put it on the back burner a little bit just because of time and space to do those things. But I have a supervisor now, Travis Fulmer, who's very passionate about this. He's gone out and gotten a couple of grants, and we're definitely picking up what we're doing. So he's working on the greenhouse behind the North Building now, working with Delta students to kind of revive that greenhouse. He has done a beautiful job reviving the garden at Park Forest Elementary and has started an after-school club for students. So there's a lot of things going on with Farm to School. It's really, really nice, and wanted to share some of that with you. On the next slide, just one of the things I love about my job is it's not, we do come in every day and take care of kids and make sure they get breakfast and lunch, but there's a lot of opportunities to further reach out and help families and help kids. And so some of the things I just wanted to point out, USDA this year provided a waiver that during Ramadan, which started a couple days ago, students, it's only a waiver for the high school, but some students are often fasting and not able to eat breakfast and lunch at school. We can pack a breakfast and lunch for them to pick up at the end of the day and take home with them. So we started actually just today, students picking them up. We have a couple kids who did sign up. And again, not a big thing, but it's really nice that we can support those students who want that service. In the upper right-hand corner is a picture of our Thanksgiving collaboration with the food bank, where we had about 400 families we were able to provide turkeys and groceries to with a collaboration with the food bank. In the bottom right-hand corner is a picture of us accepting a Giant check from the Giant Corporation with their Roundup program. And while that is a big, nice pot of money that we can use to help families, we also get through the year a lot of smaller donations just from community members. At the end of the school year, when students are graduating or leaving the district, a lot of families opt to donate their fund balances to us, remaining balances. And we're able to use that money to help kids. So far this year, we've put over $13,000 directly into students' accounts. It's often families who have applied for free and reduced but aren't eligible. It's kids that we notice have big IOUs, and I reach out to the family, and then we'll transfer money into pay IOUs off and give them money to purchase. So it's really nice to be able to have those funds to support families as we need to. And then the last picture on that page is our summer lunch program. So I did want to touch on this just a little bit because this is fully federally funded. It is something I'm very worried about what will happen with the funding for this program. Sorry, excuse me. So last year, USDA made a new summer lunch program available that is specifically for rural areas. The summer lunch program traditionally requires kids to come to a location, eat one meal, and leave. And they have to eat the meal on site. They can't take it with them. It's not very convenient. And if a parent has to drive you to the site, time-wise and gas-wise, it's often not very, very helpful. So this rural site program allows us to give families groceries, like a bag of groceries to provide breakfast and lunch for their kids for 5 days. It has to be in a rural location, and it has to meet some income guidelines. And we were able to identify Oak Hall Park as meeting all of USDA's requirements. So it was lovely. We thought we would serve 150 children a day. By the end of the summer, we were serving 700 children. So we would pack on Mondays and Tuesdays, and we would distribute groceries to families on Wednesdays. And families would register online and let us know they were coming. So it was a great program, fully funded through the federal government. As of right now, the program is still operating for the summer. As of right now, we are signed up to have a site. I am worried about the funding. So we will kind of wait and see. But as of now, we're planning on repeating that program this summer. And then my last slide is truly, I'm the paper pusher for the food service program. I sit at my desk a lot and make sure we're following all the government rules and filling in all the government forms. I have the most wonderful staff. These gentlemen and women work so hard and they care so much. So it would be completely remiss of me not to come here and thank them publicly and share with you how wonderful they are. They are such a resource to our school district, and I truly appreciate them, and I'm sure you do as well. So that's what I have. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, we certainly appreciate that. Are there questions for Megan? Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
Going to your IOU campaign, you wrote that you're aware of the campaign to raise fund, but you would not encourage it, although you do say that family earning 58,000 and 4 is not eligible. So why wouldn't you encourage it? Because the reason I'm asking this question is because I've had people come to me to ask, they want to donate.
Right, and absolutely give me money. And on a one-on-one basis, when I'm talking to a family, I'll see if they need help, we help them. To just blanketly pay off IOUs every year, we actually did that 2 years in a row. And what we found then is people did not apply for free and reduced meals.
I understand that. That's not my question. The question is that could they donate money to you and then you'll decide? Because
absolutely.
that was what they wanted me to ask
Okay,
you
yeah.
today.
Okay, yeah,
So I said
absolutely.
you're not against that. You're
I'm
just
not- oh,
against a
no.
blanket one.
No, it's very, very nice. I love that I can help these families, and the response we get back from them is so appreciative. But I don't want to do is just blanketly pay off IOUs at the end of the year. It really just makes the problem worse.
So my response to them is to get in touch with you. Is that it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
And if folks want a tax deduction,
Are you on?
yeah, if folks want a tax deduction, if they make a contribution to the foundation, we can flow that through to Megan for that program as well.
Okay, is that listed under one of the foundation, like where to give the
Not
money?
yet, but it's going to be.
Okay, because I haven't
Just
seen
had a
it.
conversation today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Just to let you know, we are creating a administrator sign-up sheet for summer lunch.
Oh,
this year.
great.
So
Can always use help.
Nice.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jackie.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you can make it a board sign up sheet as well. I think some of us would really enjoy hanging out at Oak Hall, helping out, so.
Yeah. All right.
Also, I have to, my daughter says thank you for the warm cheese pretzels. It's her favorite lunch.
I do want to say about the summer program. I mean, Megan, I think that speaks to you and your team, the fact that you only anticipated 100. And I know when that program was launched, and I think we purchased some equipment to help you keep everything cold and what you needed at Oak Hall, because it was a unique situation. I was honestly concerned, not that I was concerned you wouldn't run it well, but just because they constrained you in that way, whether it would really impact participation. So the fact that I know you were conservative in your estimate, and then to have it explode to that level, I think probably speaks to the work that you do to communicate what you offer to our community. And I just think it's phenomenal. And please don't ever retire. It's not until I'm gone.
Well,
Debbie, you wanted to add something?
Well.
I know. I just really wanted to say wow on the summer program. And is that 700 families in our district?
That's 700 children.
Okay.
It was about 350. It averaged out to almost 2 children per family. It really could be anybody. So they could come from another district.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. But anyway, I just wanted to say wow.
We
That was
sent, we
amazing.
sent the order form out to SCASD student families.
Absolutely.
But they could share them on or, yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
If you won't retire, we'll make your slot earlier in the agenda next year. I know he is. He taught on a bunch of my kids. Anyway, so I think we're going to do community ed next
Yep.
with Shannon Messick. Thanks for your patience, Shannon.
My computer officially died for the evening, so.
I saw those warnings going up.
once again, PC.
Hater. He's a hater.
CJ is a Mac person.
It's cheaper.
Appropriate.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm going to keep things brief tonight so that you can move on with what you need, but I'll answer any questions that you have along the way too. We'll start off with just giving an overview of this year's SEAL program and where things are with us right now. We instituted an increase in our program fees of about 25% over last year. So we went from $295 a month to $370 a month. for our families this year, and that was, we'll get to the kind of overview of the financials later, but that was in response to our increased costs, as well as just trying to bring us in line with where programs like SEAL are in our community as far as cost and value of the program. Alongside that increase to the monthly fees, we did resume part-time programming for our families to provide them some flexibility and some financial savings if they didn't need the full-time program. We'd had part-time options pre-COVID, and then because we were reduced capacity for a variety of reasons in that year or two after COVID, we did away with them because we were able to fill seats with full-time students. We were keeping cohorts small, all of that stuff with COVID. So bringing them back with the increased rates was a good timing for our family, and we do have a good interest and good use of those part-time days. We did reopen the Coral Street program going into this school year, so we do have all 8 programs hosting their own program this year, all 8 schools hosting their own program. It did have the side effect of causing an increased interest at Coral Street, so that has led to higher wait lists at that school, and we'll take a look at those numbers here in a second. There is not a lot of fat in the SEAL budget. There's not a lot of places to cut back. It's like the rest of the district, it's personnel costs. The only line item that we had where we could really look at some savings this year was with our community partners. So that's the Millbrook Marsh, Discovery Space, Lincoln Caverns, all of our STEM art providers. We've cut them down really in fourth, essentially to what they were offering before. So instead of going to a school 16 sessions or 16 classes a year, now they're coming only 4. So that's been an adjustment for the students, the families, the providers. Of course, there was a financial impact to their side of things, but that was really the only line item that we have to cut costs on our side. And then, of course, the big change for this year is we're rounding out the first full year of having been licensed by DHS. Recertification for 7 of the 8 schools, Coral Street's on a different timeline, is currently underway. We had a file audit on Friday that went swimmingly. It's been a pretty easy transition for us. We figured it would be. It's just a lot more paperwork. For the most part, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge the SEAL supervisors who really are taking on the brunt of that on the ground, along with all of the support staff on a day-to-day basis. They have embraced the changes. Again, not a ton to see on the ground as far as how the day-to-day program operates, but just a lot more paperwork. I don't know how many times I can say that. We are drowning in paperwork, but it's going well. So SEAL by the numbers, this year and the 2 years prior, just those monthly fees, so you can see how they've increased over time. And again, that big change this year, we'll look at the finances and that'll kind of speak for itself. We're settling in, I think that 450 students, student enrollments per year is probably our sweet spot. As far as, unless something changes, I think at the community level with our hiring environment and our staffing environment, I'm not sure we're going to be able to accommodate many more students than that. I'm trying to be conservative in that. I always hope for the best, but I think we've got a few years of history to prove right now that things have just changed. And so unless that pendulum swings and we get more students working and working more hours, more of our Penn State students or more SCAS staff interested in giving their time to the program after school, this might be where we kind of settle as our capacity to SEAL wide. And then you can see the wait list this year has increased over last year. The primary reason for that is that Coral Street has increased interest, but also we lost some seats at Spring Creek due to a loss of several everyday staff between last year and this year. And so we've just struggled to rebuild that staffing list to be able to get that capacity back up to 60. It's come down to 45. So those 2 schools are kind of the brunt of that wait list at each school, or those 2 schools. I wanted to show you a student enrollment versus SEAL enrollment across the 8 schools. What you see here might be a little bit different than what's in your packet because I am not as adept at PowerSchool as I thought I was, and I was pulling in the pre-registered kindergartners when I pulled the numbers that you saw in your packet. So I apologize for not catching that in time. overall SEAL student or SEAL enrollment versus student enrollment is 16%. And so 16% of our elementary students are staying every day after school and participating in the SEAL program. We have some outliers. Mount Nittany is low at 10%, and then we've had Radio Park at 21%, and that's historically been our largest percentage of students after school. Excuse me. One thing about the SEAL program that I think, I mean, we're serving 16% of the population, which I think is fantastic. Because this program is available every day after school, the entire 6 years that a child is in elementary school. If we look at how long the average child is actually, or the average student is enrolled in SEAL and their average attendance, they are spending about the equivalent in hours to an entire school year. So if our school year for elementary students is about 1,200 hours, the average SEAL student spending about 1,100 hours at SEAL across their entire enrollment in SEAL. I don't think that that's something that we can overlook, is the value that that program provides in opportunities in art, STEM, social emotional learning, recreational activities, peer relations, and so on. The financials, this is for the last 3 complete years. I didn't do projected for or budget for the current fiscal year because it's always difficult for us. Our enrollment can vary throughout the year, so that's always a harder number to pin down, which I'm sure is a source of stress for Randy in accounting. But when we look at year over year, 21-22 was still, I would say, a rebuilding year from COVID. So our enrollments were lower. We were only at about 330 students that year. So revenue was down, expenses were down. Moving into the 22-23 school year, we had about 430 students enrolled. So our expenses went up, our revenue went up. And then the big change, so you'll see if we look at the community ed revenue and operational expenses, you'll see that we've covered the direct operational expenses with the revenue that community ed generates. The majority of that SEAL. We have driver's ed, we have some secondary offerings, but the brunt of it is the SEAL revenue and expenses. So we're covering those direct operational expenses. It's just the administrative expenses that are falling short from year to year. And you can see that that falling short has increased, especially going into last fiscal year. And that was primarily due to, we had some contractual changes. So we had some of our SCASD paras that work during the school day and then also work for SEAL actually experience a 30% increase in their hourly pay rate, which I find fantastic for them. I don't begrudge them that. I just have that line to walk of how these effects district-wide kind of trickle down to affect the community ed programs. And so that's where we're seeing that like $220,000 deficit for last budget year. And again, leading to why we increased
those
the
contractual
fees.
changes were not known when we set the 23-24 budget, as well as we had already set the rates for that year for the families not knowing that information. So it was just those two factors really hurt that fiscal year. So that is a large part why our rates went up so significantly this year in part as well.
Yeah, the 25% increase going from 295 to 370 this year hurt. It's just not something that I necessarily would wanted to institute for our families. I will say, however, that we have undercharged for this program and its value for many years. So while it would have been nice to increase slowly over time, we had to play our hand, if you will. And so I will say that there's been not a lot of pushback. I think our families knew the value of the program versus what they were paying and have appreciated that savings for a long time. The other thing going back to the DHS licensing is that being licensed means we qualify for the Child Care Works state subsidy. And so we have some families who have applied and been approved to receive that funding. So that's funding that comes directly to us. They either qualify in part or in full, and so they either pay the balance or they pay nothing. And so I think that's been a help to a lot of our families this year. So that was a good trade-off. There are other things.
Shannon,
I'm
will that-
sorry.
How will that, when you say paid in full, like, is there a cap on that based on our fees? Like if, because we raised our fees substantially, so will paid in full still cover our full?
It should,
It should.
unless something, if our fees outpace what the state considers.
That's what I was
yes.
trying, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're
Um,
still within that. you
We're
think?
still within, yeah.
When do those funds come in? How do we, are they in this as far as right
They
now?
wouldn't be in anything now because this is just affected this fiscal year. So since I didn't include anything in the presentation about where we are now, that's not in there. Those
We
funds.
weren't eligible last year.
Yeah. Those funds are being, they're not going to hit necessarily the community ed budget, but I think when the accounting folks and I do the FY25 finals, they'll get pulled into that kind of summary screen that you see on this slide. And community ed does do other programs besides SEAL, even though that's the brunt of what we do. So we have VIPS and the volunteer clearances, which is something that falls under the community ed umbrella, but does not generate revenue. And I should have explained this, I just throw the term around, but VIPS is volunteers in public schools. And that's where we're running our tutoring center at the high school 2 days a week throughout the Penn State semester, because the primarily our tutors are Penn State students. So we're currently serving 44 students with 36 tutors. Last school year, we served 52 students with the help of 34 tutors, and that's a pretty average number year over year. The most common subjects, the program is available for K to 12. If we have elementary students, they're primarily coming in for reading and writing, and our secondary students are coming in for math, with science being a very close second there. And then our volunteer clearances, those all come to my department for processing. Last year, our database included 935 cleared volunteers. We're sitting at about 600 right now. That number will increase as we get closer to the end of the school year with fifth grade trips, field trips, and parties, and prom, and everything. Field day, yes, that was the other big one. And then there's in-car driver education. That's a fee-based program generating revenue for us. We serve an average of 165 students per year. The majority of them are high school students, but we also serve adults. We currently have 3 instructors with 2 vehicles. We're driving at 7 o'clock in the morning on a school day and 7 o'clock at night on a school day, and weekends and all throughout the summer. So between the 3 instructors, they're able to cover the majority of the times that our students are available and interested in driving. I do just want to put this on your radar. I don't know when it will happen, but it will happen. PennDOT has stopped certifying instructors in driver's ed programs like ours to offer the driving test. They are pushing people to third-party testing sites. And so right now we have 1 instructor that's certified to offer the test, and she will not work with us forever, unfortunately. So when she leaves, it means we will not be able to offer the test to our high school students. It's not a huge deal. We have students that take driving lessons with us and still choose to go out to test at the DMV. But we have students who love driving or testing with our instructor as well. We also, with serving 165 students, there's obviously a lot more 16-year-olds that go out to the DMV that don't come through our program. So it won't be a big deal, but I think it will make its rounds on social media when the time comes, because it will be a change that our community is not used to. They like testing with us. So that's everything. I just want to point out that we had a SCAS alum, the lovely Isabel Snyder, who graduated a few years ago. She's a senior at the in art ed at Penn State. She came to SEAL in the fall for her honors thesis. She's working with Juniper and Foxdale and other community groups to do a multi-generational project that will ultimately turn into a mural on one of the Millbrook Marsh buildings later this spring. So if you're out that way later on and you see something, you'll know that's one of our former students, who's a delightful individual. And I was happy that she included SEAL in her project. So any questions?
Thanks, Shannon. I just would like to point out that Shannon was very gracious when she said that going through all of the licensing with the HS was just a bunch of paperwork. That's not true. It was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. There is a lot of paperwork to process,
but it's also been a lot of decisions, a lot of planning, a lot of strategic thinking, and she's handled it like a champ, and want to thank you.
Thanks. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear you have downplayed it. It certainly, I know when that change was in front of us, you know, it was a big concern about how challenging it might be logistically. And we never heard a peep from anything until you just had it all magically done. So
That was the goal. So thank you.
other questions?
I just wanted to say I did get to visit with some of my students in the fall, and I learned two things on that trip. One, y'all do an outstanding job.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. I also learned I'm not as good at 24 as most fifth graders. So
You have to come back and practice some more.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah. I have to say, I feel lucky because I have two 16-year-olds that I literally just signed up today for drivers. So I'm getting in under the wire,
Yeah,
hopefully.
as long as we still
But that will be a hard change and a sad one. So
It will. Yeah.
thanks.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Anything else, Randy, for finance? Okay. That concludes committee of the whole portion of the meeting. We now have a second round of opportunity for public comment. Do we have anyone in person that would like to make a public comment? Yes, come on up to the podium.
Hello again, Michelle Garrett, parent, College Township, et cetera, et cetera. I want to say thank you to the superintendent and to the board for the clarification around use of preferred name versus use of legal names on student IDs. We being the Center LGBT Plus organization, and also I think reasonably fair to say the queer community broadly appreciates GASD's attention and support on these issues. I did have a point of clarification I wanted to ask about. My comments, and I believe many of the other comments that were shared tonight were based on the information that were shared with the school district community in an email that went out last Friday, February 28th, in which the reversal of the decision to use legal names in Power School was announced. And that email communication went on to delineate by bullet points a list of areas in which preferred names would be used and a list of areas in which legal names would be used. And the information that the community had ahead of this meeting, the most up-to-date information we had was that student IDs is listed under legal name in that email communication. So my question then is, was that information in that email incorrect? Was the information shared most recently tonight incorrect? Was the decision to not require legal names on student IDs made between Friday's email communication and tonight's board meeting? And will there be an updated communication to the community so that the information that was shared with the folks in the room today is widely available to those whom the decision will impact?
So the latter, it was between Friday and now that this decision was made or came to me. There will be a communication that goes out prior to the implementation in over spring break. We just want to make sure that we have all the information to share during that time to make sure it's accurate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, so Justin is our head of IT. You wanted to add something too. Justin, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. I was just going to reiterate what CJ said. The large thing is it's an evolving situation for us as we determine what we can change and what we can't. So with the feedback we've received, we've been continuing to work through those items as we can and updating administration with what options we have available to us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Yeah, I think that's the challenge a little bit is the changing information as we try to find solutions. So thanks for the question. Anyone else? Yes, for public comment?
Hey, Sloan, I also want to thank you for the clarification. This is another issue that I've noticed, and that is for certain public or community events at schools. I noticed that there's significantly less disability support in those than any other thing. And I want to make a request to maybe make sure that there are quiet spaces available during the said events, such as proms and other events, just to make sure that if someone is really overstimulated, they have a place they can go. This is not only for people's comfort, it's also a safety concern.
Thanks for that suggestion. And I know a remark earlier this evening was made about our hearing impaired community. And for those who may not have caught it, we have actually ordered and have a system coming in that will help people who are here in person have a better reception and be able to hear better. And we're looking forward to those arriving hopefully in the near future. So any other public comment? Sure, Shay.
Hi, Shay McGowan, president of SCAE. I'm president of SCAE. I just wanted to, tomorrow, March 4th is Red for Ed. It's public. It's, if you want to support public educators, it's encouraged to wear red.
Thanks. I've read that earlier today and it slipped my mind to mention it. So thanks, Shay. Anyone else or anyone online for public comment in this last session? All right, seeing then we're going to move on to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda works by a single motion for several items, and that's the extent I'm going to explain it because it's late. So quick rundown minutes. Anything in the finance and personnel department section. Instructional programs as usual, student trips. And the physical plant routine contracts. No questions or problems. All righty. Then I'd like to call for a motion to approve. Oh, sorry, Debbie, did you?
It's not a question. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to say thank you to the individual who is going to be joining our CAC.
Oh, yes,
Guess
very
we
much
could have
so.
done that after we vote for it, but assuming that we vote to approve it, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and she's doing two.
Yes.
So that's.
And I'm
lots.
sorry, I don't have the memo up, so I can't say by name, but thank you, thank you.
Indeed. All right, now I'll ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda items through 10 through 13.
Miller, so moved.
Colby, second.
All right, any last questions or comments? Any public comment on the agenda? Yeah. It's after 10 o'clock.
The agenda.
All right, seeing none, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. Consent agenda is passed. We have one action item. Agenda. Two. Oh, sorry, I didn't flip the page yet. Darn it. All right. First, we have a motion to approve purchase of Amtrol hydraulics trainer CTC competitive equipment grant. This is shown in attachment 14A.
Miller, so moved.
Colby, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion?
I went on the CTC tour and it was amazing.
Art, you just have to lean closer.
You got to push the button.
Okay. I just went on the tour and that space is amazing. And I believe he talked about that particular item. And so I just want to say what an amazing space it is and what an amazing resource it is for our students.
Yeah.
He's also really good about getting grants for a lot of this equipment. So
I know almost everything we
it's
approve
amazing.
for Ben Morden is usually covered at least in part by grants. So we definitely appreciate that. He's
As I say, remaining balance is $170 out of 21,615. So
Yeah.
I think I'm good with it.
we appreciate that. Anybody else? All right. Any public comment on this item? All right, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. All right, final agenda item for approval. Agenda item 14B, a motion to approve the purchase of band uniforms as shown in attachment 14B.
Miller, so
Yes.
moved.
Colby, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. This is,
Done.
we were fortunate, the foundation purchased a large batch of new band uniforms for us several years ago, almost a decade ago, and we need to just expand our options there and have some replacements. So that's the goal of this item. Do I have any questions or discussion? Are you sure? You can, you're allowed. Everybody else talked.
See what eyes I got from that.
Oh. You want to see how many daggers you got? Okay. Anyone on this side of the table? Okay. Any public comment regarding the band uniforms? All right. Board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That would be a dangerous choice, but all right. That item is passed. All right, that concludes our agenda for this evening. Looking ahead to future meetings, we have March 17th, regular policy development. We'll have a board work session on Dr. Terry Erbacher's report